You're doing too much and getting too little. You've been told that the only way to change your life is to force it. Grind harder, visualize more vividly, hustle louder, manifest more powerfully, push through resistance with discipline and repetition. Every motivational source seems to echo the same message. Do more, think more, control more. And yet, here you are, stuck in a loop that feels just familiar enough to keep you confused and just painful enough to keep you restless. But here's something you've probably never been told clearly. The universe doesn't respond to pressure. It responds to permission. In the next few hours, we're going to unpack a truth that most people never even glimpse in a lifetime of spiritual searching and mental conditioning. You're not stuck because you're weak. You're stuck because you're out of sync with the stream of life that was built for you. You're not lazy. You're misaligned. You're not invisible to the universe. You're just tuned to the wrong frequency, like trying to hear a song that's playing on a radio station you haven't dialed into. This is not a mindset video. This is not about motivation. This is not a fluffy spiritual fluff fest. This is the quantum manual you never received, because the system that raised you didn't want you to understand it. In this moment, right now, you're going to learn how to stop forcing the world into your mold and instead glide into the stream that already has everything coded into it. The people, opportunities, insights, ideas, moments, and outcomes that match your highest alignment. Now pause. Let that settle. Glide, not grind. Trajectory, not timeline. Observer quieting, not visualization. That's the framework we're building. There's a silent war happening inside you, between the part of you that wants to trust the process and the part of you that wants to control the outcome. The result? Constant interference. You're trying to orchestrate quantum patterns using a tool that was only designed to name them, your mind. But the mind can't create the stream. It can only distort it. So here's what this experience is going to unlock. You'll learn how to exit the pattern of over-efforting and force-based living. You'll discover the subtle but potent mechanics of frequency tuning. You'll understand how your current observer state collapses timelines and limits potential, and how quieting it gives you access to quantum fields of choice you've never been aware of. You'll tune into micro-adjustments that can change the trajectory of your life without massive external changes. You'll see how to stop chasing outcomes and start matching streams in a way that feels peaceful, intuitive, and profoundly powerful. We'll cover how to silence the internal noise that drowns out the guidance the universe is constantly sending you. We'll break down how desires can trap you when they aren't matched with alignment. And we'll take apart your concepts of control, effort, identity, and even time, so you can reconstruct your life from a new state of clarity and access. But this only works if you're honest about one thing. And it's not easy. You've been forcing reality without realizing it, trying to bend the universe into your will, rather than listening to the frequency that's been calling you all along. And today, that ends. You're going to learn how to glide, not float aimlessly, not give up. Glide with deliberate precision. Like a surfer who doesn't move the ocean, but knows exactly when to catch the wave. You're going to learn trajectory tuning. How small calibrations in your attention and vibration radically alter the outcomes you attract. And you're going to master observer quieting. How to stop collapsing your possibilities through interference, and finally let the stream show you what it's been holding all this time. So stay alert. Stay engaged. Stay curious. Because we're not just going to talk about reality. We're going to show you how to tune into it. Let's start by cutting through the fog. You don't need to find your purpose. You don't need to figure out where your life is supposed to go next. You don't even need to get back on track. Because here's the truth. You're not lost. You're simply not tuned to the version of reality that contains what you're seeking. Reality isn't static. It's layered, stacked, and fluid. It contains infinite versions of your life, all playing out at once. Some where you succeed, some where you struggle, some where you're invisible, some where you're magnetic. These aren't fantasies. They're potential frequency streams, and you're always tuned into one of them, whether you realize it or not. The problem? You've been trying to move through a reality that doesn't match you. You've been applying pressure where resonance was required, You've been trying to run on tracks that weren't laid for your frequency. That creates resistance. Not metaphorical resistance, actual friction at the quantum level. Now let's go deeper. Every thought you think, every emotional state you maintain, every belief you carry, they each act as frequency markers. And those markers don't just influence what happens in your life. They select which version of life you step into. You're not creating your reality from scratch. You are selecting it from a field of possibilities, moment to moment. This is why two people can follow the same method, read the same book, apply the same process, and one gets the result while the other is left frustrated. It's not about what they did. It's about what they were tuned to. Tuning isn't about effort. It's about coherence. Right now, you may be watching this because something feels misaligned. You've been doing everything right, but the results aren't lining up. You may even be doubting yourself, wondering why your breakthroughs feel blocked. You're not broken. You're not cursed. You're not unlucky. You're just tuned into a frequency that's incompatible with the outcomes you're trying to experience. Let's talk about tuning in practical terms. Think of yourself as a receiver. Your mind is the interface. Your nervous system is the antenna. Your emotional baseline is the transmitter. And the frequency you hold determines which quantum stream you access. If your emotional field is saturated with frustration, self-doubt, anxiety, or urgency, then your tuning becomes volatile. You're not tuned to clarity or solutions. You're tuned to chaos. And no matter how much positive thinking you slap on top, the deeper frequency always wins. You cannot affirm your way out of a signal you haven't calibrated. So how do you retune? Not by changing your goals, not by changing your career, not even by changing your environment, at least not yet. You retune by first identifying what you're currently aligned to, not what you think you're aligned to, what your signal is actually broadcasting. Ask yourself, what emotional states dominate your day without effort? What assumptions about life do you hold without questioning? What do you expect from people when you don't filter your thoughts? Your answers to those are not reflections of your thoughts. They're reflections of your frequency. And frequency is a selector. Always. If you're trying to reach a version of life that's built on ease, flow, and clarity, but you're tuning in through a channel of control, stress, and urgency, you're calling the right number on the wrong phone. This isn't about guilt. It's about awareness. You've spent years developing strategies for survival, achievement, validation, and security. Those strategies became your baseline frequency. But just because they help you survive doesn't mean they're fit to help you align. Now that you know you've been out of tune, you're ready for the real question. Are you willing to quiet the noise long enough to hear what the right stream actually feels like? Because once you feel it, you'll never go back. Next, we will uncover why it's not that the universe has been ignoring your intentions. It's that your receiver hasn't been listening on the right frequency. The most common misconception people carry, consciously or not, is this. I've asked, I've worked, I've waited, and the universe still hasn't responded. But here's the actual truth, hidden in plain sight. The universe never ignores. It only responds. And it only responds to signal clarity, not noise, not desperation, not intention alone. This means one thing you've probably never heard. The universe isn't silent. You've been too loud to hear it. Your internal chatter, the mental rehearsals, the emotional reactions, the overanalyzing, the obsessing, the visualizing that's secretly rooted in fear rather than trust. All of that creates static. You've been trying to download a signal through interference you didn't know you were producing. Think of the quantum stream like a symphony. Beautiful, vast, multi-layered. But it doesn't shout to get your attention. It flows underneath the noise floor. It moves in the silent gaps between thoughts. It rides the quiet. It doesn't enter your awareness when you're trying to control it. It emerges when you become still enough to meet it. You've been listening for thunder, but the universe has been whispering all along. That whisper is called resonance. It's not verbal. It's not intellectual. It's not even emotional in the way you typically understand emotion. It's energetic alignment, the moment your internal frequency matches the stream, where what you've asked for already exists. So, Let's correct a deep-rooted misunderstanding. The law of attraction has been oversimplified to the point of being dangerously misleading. You don't attract what you want. You attract what you listen to. And most people are tuned to fear-based stories masquerading as desires. Let's break this down clearly. You want freedom, but you expect restriction. You want clarity, but you operate in confusion. You want expansion, but you vibrate in contraction. You want connection, but you carry a frequency of self-protection. The signal the universe picks up is not the words you speak or the affirmations you repeat. It's the resonance of your actual state. Now pause here. This is where most people try to muscle their way into change. They try to fix their mindset, control their thoughts, discipline their energy. And in doing so, they completely miss the point. Because the moment you try to fix your frequency from a place of force, you distort it again. Listening doesn't require fixing. It requires quiet. You are a receiver. You cannot receive while transmitting at full volume. You cannot access resonance while living in internal contradiction. And this is exactly why your signal hasn't been getting through, because your need has been louder than your receptivity. Let's illustrate this even more precisely. When a radio is slightly out of tune, the song doesn't disappear. It just comes through with distortion, static, and glitches. The melody is still being played. Your radio just isn't cleanly tuned. And every time you worry, overthink, analyze, or compare, you bump the dial off frequency again. But here's the power. Once you begin to stabilize your internal frequency, even slightly, you don't need to try to hear the universe. You naturally start receiving. You begin noticing patterns. You feel intuitive nudges. You overhear just the right sentence. You open a book to the perfect page. You meet someone who says exactly what you needed to hear. You feel timing sync up with an intelligence you can't explain. And you'll wonder, has this always been happening? Yes, it has. But you were too mentally busy to notice. So the question becomes, how do you start listening when your whole life has been built on doing? It starts by quieting the part of you that thinks it always knows best. The part that's addicted to overplanning. The part that resists stillness. The part that believes if it's not controlling, it's failing. Because when you don't trust the stream, you try to control the direction. That's what most people call effort. But what if the signal you're waiting for only emerges after you stop chasing it? This isn't theory. This is quantum architecture. You collapse access to streams when you observe from a controlling lens. But when you listen, genuinely listen, you create coherence. You become a match. The song becomes clear. Let's refine this even further. Stillness is not absence of activity. It's the absence of interference. You can walk through a city street in stillness. You can be at a business meeting in stillness. Stillness is a state of internal receptivity, not physical inactivity. It feels like presence. It feels like openness. It feels like neutrality. It feels like permission. When you stop pushing, the answers come. Not always in language. Not always in concepts. Sometimes in timing. Sometimes in sensation. Sometimes in serendipity. But they come. Always. And this is why the universe has never ignored you. It's been responding precisely to the version of you that's been loudest. Which version will you let broadcast from this moment forward? Next, we will uncover what happens when your signal becomes noisy again, and why forcing reality to respond is like yelling in a library. It guarantees you'll be unheard. You've probably been told that if you want something badly enough, you should declare it boldly. Visualize it daily. Command it. Crush your doubts. Outperform the odds. Make the universe listen. But here's the flaw no one talks about. Every time you yell into the field, you confirm that you believe the field can't hear you unless you scream. That energy carries weight. It says, I don't trust that I'm heard. I don't trust that it's coming. I don't trust that I'm aligned. And what you broadcast as energy, you receive as reality. So let's look closer. Imagine walking into a pristine library, one where sacred books line the walls, and deep silence allows thoughts to echo clearly in the mind. Now imagine someone running in, yelling at the top of their lungs, demanding answers, demanding knowledge, demanding revelation. What would happen? No one answers. The silence doesn't break. The message never arrives. Not because it wasn't there, but because the volume of the demand drowned out the signal of reception. This is what forcing energy does to the field. It creates energetic noise so loud that the very frequency you need to access becomes obscured. The guidance was there. The support was tuned in. The timeline was already formed. But the act of forcing collapses it out of reach. You think you're being powerful, but what you're actually being is resistant. Let's dissect this further. When you try to make something happen, you introduce tension. You create resistance to what is, and in doing so, you separate from the stream that already contains what you're asking for. This isn't abstract. It's mechanics. Tension disturbs coherence, and coherence is what aligns you with the stream. The more you chase, the more you broadcast lack. The more you demand, the more you embody separation. The more you insist, the more you signal distrust. This is the irony of over-efforting. The very energy you think will move you forward is the energy keeping you stuck. But you've been rewarded for forcing, haven't you? You've gotten grades, promotions, compliments, status, approval, temporary relief. That conditioning is hard to unlearn. It tells you, if I just push harder, I'll break through. But breakthrough doesn't come from pressure. It comes from precision. And precision doesn't scream. It whispers. It waits. It flows. Now here's the shift most never make. You are allowed to be powerful without pushing. You are allowed to be certain without shouting. You are allowed to receive without control. When you understand this, you begin to operate from a place of inner command, not outer effort. That's not laziness. That's energetic mastery. Let's ground this even further. The field you're trying to interact with is not linear. It doesn't respond to language alone. It doesn't reward brute force. It's like water, fluid, responsive, sensitive to frequency and intent. Try to punch water, and it slips through your fingers. Flow with it, and it supports you. So when you scream your desires, when you obsess over outcomes, when you mentally demand answers, you break coherence with the very field you're trying to collaborate with. And then you blame the universe for being silent. It wasn't silent. You were yelling in a library. So how do you shift out of this? You allow the signal to come to you. You get still enough to feel what stream is already trying to carry you. You stop broadcasting desperation. You release the belief that control equals safety. You replace urgency with curiosity. You replace dominance with resonance. It feels like space, not empty space. Intelligent space, responsive space. It feels like creating room for answers, not chasing them. It feels like trusting the water to carry you when you stop thrashing. And in that stillness, guidance becomes clear. You hear the next move. You sense the alignment. You feel the flow restore. That's not weakness. That's alignment. Here's the paradox most never solve. The less you try to make the universe respond, the more it reveals itself. The less you force it, the more precise your access becomes. The quieter your mind, the louder your guidance becomes. And so your job is not to shout at reality. It's to become the exact frequency match for the stream where the answers already exist. Next, we will break down how your very act of observing can collapse infinite possibilities into a single limited outcome, and how you can stop that pattern from silently sabotaging your alignment. You've probably never thought of your mind as an active participant in shaping the fabric of reality itself. But here's the radical truth. The very act of observing can collapse all the possibilities available to you into one narrow, often undesired outcome. This isn't metaphor. This is quantum behavior. In physics, this is called the observer effect, the principle that the presence of an observer influences the outcome of what's being observed. But in your daily life, it plays out in a far more subtle and personal way. It means this: the moment you label something as a problem, the moment you decide something is delayed, the moment you conclude you're stuck, blocked, unlucky, or behind, you've collapsed your reality to only reflect that version. You've unconsciously locked yourself into a timeline where that interpretation becomes self-reinforcing, because your mind isn't just describing reality, it's helping construct it. So let's be crystal clear. You are not just someone who experiences reality. You are a builder of it, frame by frame, moment by moment, stream by stream, and the building tool that shapes your personal quantum field, your observer lens. But here's where it gets tricky. Your observer isn't neutral. It's conditioned. It's filled with old data, wounds, patterns, survival logic, limiting beliefs you absorbed before you could even speak. So when you observe the present moment, you're not seeing what is. You're seeing what your conditioning expects. You don't observe reality. You observe projections of what you've already concluded about it. And each time you do that, you collapse the infinite possibilities of what could have been into a single version that matches your outdated filter. That is observer syndrome. Now pause and reflect. Have you ever entered a new situation expecting rejection and somehow experienced it again, just like before? Have you ever anticipated something going wrong, and then it did, even though you prepared carefully? Have you ever tried to stay optimistic, but kept watching for signs of failure, and they showed up? That's not proof you're unlucky. That's proof your observer is more powerful than you realize. Your conclusions are not passive. They are instructions to the field. So what's the way out? You don't fight the observer. You quiet it. You don't try to override your thoughts with better ones. That just adds more mental weight to the field. You release the compulsion to define. And when you stop defining, something profound happens. Reality begins to show you new faces, new timelines, new opportunities, new configurations that your old observer never had access to. You see possibility where there was only repetition. You feel expansion where there was only tension. You hear signals you couldn't notice when you were too busy narrating the moment. You reclaim access to quantum plurality, the condition of multiple outcomes existing simultaneously. This is where real change begins. Let's zoom in even further. Every time you label something as not working, you cut off access to the stream where it already is. Every time you label yourself as not enough, you distort the signal that leads to embodiment. Every time you decide your timeline is broken, you push away the one that's right on time. And it doesn't matter if you believe in energy or quantum fields. Your results reflect your frequency, whether you believe in gravity or not. So here's the shift. You don't have to believe in anything new. You only have to stop enforcing what's outdated. You don't need to fabricate a new story. You only need to stop collapsing the one that keeps recreating itself through your compulsive interpretation. Reality is responsive. Reality is interactive. Reality is waiting, but it cannot give you access to potentials you don't make room for. So the work is simple, though not always easy. Suspend the habit of collapsing what's possible, because the more still you become in your observing, the more open your field becomes in receiving. And this is the beginning of the most powerful state of all, glide. Next, we will explore what happens when you stop forcing altogether, and instead enter the quiet precision of the quantum slipstream, where alignment flows with zero friction. There's a mode of being that no one teaches you in school, business, or traditional goal-setting systems. It's not effort. It's not hustle. It's not visualizing or praying or proving. It's something entirely different. It's called glide. Glide is what happens when your energy matches the stream that already contains your outcomes before you take action. Glide is the frictionless movement that occurs when you're no longer resisting the current of your own alignment. Glide is not about getting lucky, it's about getting matched. And the moment you access glide, you realize something stunning. Reality isn't something to conquer, it's something to coalesce with. Now, let's explain why this works. Every timeline in your life, whether full of joy, chaos, breakthroughs, or loss, exists like a stream of possibility. These streams don't compete. They don't argue. They simply exist in parallel. Your vibration, meaning the overall resonance of your thoughts, emotions, and beliefs, selects which one you experience. When you're in a forcing state, your frequency is jagged, unstable, urgent, misaligned. You're trying to enter a stream that's not calibrated to carry you. But when you enter glide, you match the quantum slipstream that wants to carry you. And just like a plane catching a tailwind in the jet stream, you move forward faster, with less fuel, less friction, and greater stability. So how does glide feel? It's not the high of a dopamine hit. It's not the adrenaline of temporary motivation. It's not the rush of escaping fear. It's subtle. It's calm. It's intelligent. It feels like clarity without effort. It feels like movement without urgency. It feels like doing less, but receiving more. It feels like right place, right time. Consistently. But here's what blocks most people from glide. They associate progress with pain. They associate growth with struggle. They think if it's not hard, it's not working. And so, even when the glide shows up, they don't trust it. They sabotage it. They override it with noise. And they crash back into the cycle of resistance. Let's dismantle that pattern. Glide is not laziness. It's precision movement inside the match stream. It doesn't mean you never take action. It means you only take action from coherence, not confusion. In a glide state, actions amplify results instead of compensating for misalignment. Conversations move things forward. Ideas become invitations. Time becomes elastic. Feedback becomes fluid. And opportunities begin to show up before you go searching. You are still active. But your activity is informed by resonance, not desperation. Let's go deeper. Most people try to get into glide by feeling good. But that's not enough. Glide isn't about feeling good. It's about being clear. You can feel temporarily good while still being misaligned. You can feel emotionally elevated but energetically chaotic. Glide begins when you stop chasing emotional highs and start tuning your field. That tuning requires subtraction, not addition. Subtract mental noise. Subtract urgency. Subtract overplanning. Subtract emotional narratives. Subtract attachment to speed. And what remains? Glide. It was never far away. You were just layered over it with the weight of unnecessary force. Now here's the most critical insight. Glide can't be forced, but it can be allowed. It arises naturally when interference drops. It begins when you stop needing outcomes to validate your worth. It amplifies when you stop expecting effort to do what alignment is designed to handle. It's the most elegant way to move through life. Because it's not powered by trying, it's powered by matching. When you glide, things begin to find you. People call at the right time. Ideas arrive with full clarity. Time expands. Resources align. Doors open, not because you pushed, but because you tuned. You've moved from force to flow, from pressure to partnership, from chasing life to being met by it. And in this state, the universe isn't something out there. It becomes something with you. Right now. All the time. Next we will begin the fine work of tuning your trajectory. Not through drastic reinvention, but through subtle alignment shifts that gently curve your life into the path it was always designed to follow. Most people only correct their course after hitting a wall. They wait until something breaks, burns out, falls apart, or stops working. And then, with urgency clouding their perception, they attempt a complete overhaul, career changes, relationship exits, location jumps, spiritual bypasses. But that cycle always leads back to the same feeling. I'm starting over. Again. You don't need to start over. You don't need to crash before you pivot. You only need to tune your trajectory, subtle, invisible course corrections that gently curve your path back into alignment before the damage hits. This is trajectory tuning. It's not about goals. It's not about 5-year plans. It's not about hustle spreadsheets or morning rituals. It's about frequency steering, small, energetic adjustments that shift your alignment before momentum becomes self-sabotage. Now here's the hidden truth about momentum. Once you're on a trajectory, whether it's aligned or not, your life begins to organize itself around that arc. People show up who match that energy. Events unfold to reinforce that direction. Thoughts appear to justify it. Opportunities align with it. You start accelerating, but in the wrong direction, and it becomes harder to exit, because momentum has weight. So if you're on a trajectory built on force, fear, scarcity, or control, that path will continue to mirror those qualities until you tune it. But here's the power. You don't need to make radical changes to shift that curve. You only need to start introducing new frequency patterns. That's how glide stabilizes. That's how alignment reemerges. That's how your path bends back toward clarity, without crash, chaos, or crisis. Let's get practical. Trajectory tuning means paying attention to what precedes the pivot point. The subtle emotional signals that something feels off. The energetic residue that lingers after a conversation. The subtle dread you feel before taking action. The background hum of self-pressure that no one else sees. These are the indicators that your trajectory is preparing to curve, either by choice or by consequence. Tuning it before it bends too far is the art of precision alignment. And the tool you need for that is awareness without judgment. You don't need to shame yourself. You don't need to overhaul your life. You simply need to acknowledge the signal and allow a course correction to begin. That might mean saying no a little sooner, pausing instead of pushing, choosing a quieter room, letting the mind rest instead of strategizing, delaying an answer until alignment is clearer, trusting the neutral impulse, even when logic screams otherwise. These are not major actions. They are micro-tunings. But each one bends your trajectory back toward the field where your glide waits. Now here's where most people miss the point. They think alignment means waiting for perfect clarity. But clarity rarely precedes action. Clarity is often the result of tuning. You won't always know exactly where the glide will take you. But if you feel the arc beginning to bend gently inward, toward ease, toward coherence, toward silence, that's enough. That's the signal. Let go of the need for full certainty. Glide doesn't start with control. It starts with curvature. Just enough of a shift that the momentum begins to reorient, without abrupt collapse. Here's how you know when trajectory tuning is working. Conversations feel cleaner. Time feels less compressed. You stop arguing with yourself. You catch resistance sooner. You feel less pulled to over-explain or overcompensate. Your body softens. Your decisions feel neutral, not desperate. You're no longer running from the crash. You're flowing with the curve. And this is where alignment becomes sustainable, not in the big decisions, but in the micro-glides that nobody sees but you. Next, we will go even deeper into the core mechanism that amplifies or distorts your glide, the observer. You've begun to curve your path. Now we'll show you how quieting your internal observer unlocks deeper access to the field itself. The most overlooked component of alignment is not your thoughts, emotions, or beliefs. It's your observer, the internal mechanism that's constantly watching, judging, labeling, and defining everything you experience. And unless you learn how to quiet it, you'll never fully stabilize the glide. Because here's the core principle. The observer collapses potential. Every time you label something, good or bad, right or wrong, progress or failure, you shrink the field down to a narrow version of truth. And when your observer is overactive, it turns your life into a maze of interpretations, conclusions, expectations, and defensive logic. You don't see what is. You see what your observer permits you to see, which means your access to higher frequency streams isn't blocked by reality. It's blocked by your internal commentator. Let's break this down further. The observer thrives on contrast. It wants to compare this moment to the last. It wants to predict based on past patterns. It wants to assign meaning to everything. It wants to reduce the unknown to something safe, familiar, and manageable. And while that may feel comforting in the short term, it also creates massive friction, because reality doesn't respond to your mental commentary. It responds to your vibrational openness. And the more you observe with judgment, the more you close down the field. So how do you quiet the observer? Not by suppressing thought, not by controlling interpretation, not by trying to stop your brain. You quiet the observer by reducing your need to define. When you release your attachment to interpretation, the observer loses power. This sounds simple, but it's profound. It means allowing sensations to pass without needing to name them. It means letting moments be neutral, even when your conditioning wants to label them. It means resting in uncertainty without intellectualizing it into false control. That's where the field begins to amplify. Because when the observer quiets, the signal strengthens. You begin to notice guidance where there was once noise. You feel energy shifts without mentally explaining them. You sense when something is aligned, even if it doesn't make logical sense. And that's the paradox of power. The less you need to understand it, the more access you have. Here's a powerful truth. Stillness is not the absence of thought. It's the absence of observer interference. You can have thoughts without collapsing the field. You can experience emotions without labeling them as right or wrong. You can witness life without forcing meaning into every corner. That space between awareness and interpretation is where the field expands. It's where new options emerge. It's where glide deepens. It's where the signal becomes clean. So how do you live from this space? You begin by catching the observer mid-action. Each time you hear yourself analyzing, comparing, or predicting, simply say internally, that's the observer. No shame, no story, no spiral, just identification. That alone starts the quieting process, because awareness without reaction is the antidote to interference. And over time, you'll notice something extraordinary. The more you quiet the observer, the more synchronicities occur. Not because you're doing more, but because you're finally available to see what was always trying to find you. You're no longer collapsing timelines through premature definition. You're letting them unfold without restriction. You're allowing the quantum field to meet you, without insisting on the form it must take. This is where life gets interesting, because your inner stillness becomes a magnet. The field amplifies, guidance sharpens, momentum cleans up, and the next version of your path begins to reveal itself, not through effort, but through signal. Next, we will confront the illusion that your mind is the one steering your life. Because if quieting the observer amplifies the field, then it's time to admit that the mind itself isn't the driver, it's the interference. Let's get something out of the way. Your mind is not the master of your reality. Despite the countless hours you've spent thinking your way through problems, analyzing outcomes, forecasting consequences, planning meticulously, none of that has ever put you in the driver's seat. Because your mind was never built to lead. It was built to translate, to decode, to narrate, but not to guide. And once you understand this, you stop giving the mind authority it was never qualified to hold. This is not about disowning your intelligence. It's about understanding its place in the system. The mind is the processor, not the pilot. The calculator, not the compass. The filter, not the field. Which means if you keep relying on it to make your most important life choices, you'll end up somewhere rational, but far from resonant. Now here's where the interference comes in. The mind doesn't just offer commentary. It actively distorts your internal frequency when given too much control. Every time you overthink, overanalyze, obsess, compare, predict, or control, you add static to your signal. That static scrambles your intuitive input. It muffles your emotional intelligence. It drowns out your inner clarity. You're trying to hear truth through the noise of unfiltered mental loops. And that noise isn't just internal. It's energetic. Because your vibration isn't formed from your highest hopes. It's shaped by your dominant broadcast. And if your dominant broadcast is coming from your mind's fear, doubt, control, and ego defense, you're not in the stream. You're in resistance. Let's pause here and get practical. Have you ever felt a quiet sense of knowing? An inner yes or no, a whisper of clarity, and then immediately drown it out by thinking? You talked yourself out of the yes. You rationalized away the no. You created dozens of alternative explanations, scenarios, and counterarguments. What happened next? You took the wrong job. You stayed too long. You left too soon. You missed the exit ramp to alignment. Because your mind was louder than your knowing. That's not failure. That's distortion. And it's what happens when you let the interference run the system. So let's look at why the mind insists on control. It believes that thinking keeps you safe. That logic prevents pain. That control protects your identity. That predicting the future gives you power over it. But all those assumptions are based on scarcity. Scarcity of trust. Scarcity of safety. Scarcity of connection. And when you operate from scarcity, you tune yourself to timelines that reflect it, which means the more your mind runs the show, the more you reinforce the very conditions you are trying to escape. So how do you disrupt the interference? You stop letting thought lead. You begin to reference a deeper intelligence, one not based in language or logic. This isn't about switching off the mind. That's neither possible nor necessary. It's about reorienting your center of guidance. You shift leadership away from analysis and into alignment, from certainty into coherence, from logic into listening, from control into calibration. And the tool that allows that transition is stillness. Not emptiness, not passivity, not numbness, but the kind of presence where you witness your thoughts without obeying them. Let's be even clearer. When your mind throws thoughts at you, urgency, fear, hypotheticals, judgments, you don't resist them. You recognize them for what they are. Post-processing, not reality. You don't try to force a better thought. You don't try to argue with the one that's looping. You just stop identifying with it. You let it play out like a radio station in another room. You don't have to silence the radio. You just stop turning up the volume. And then something extraordinary happens. The static clears. The internal weight drops. The noise loses meaning. And you begin to feel again. Not emotionally react, feel. Feel the stream. Feel the signal. Feel the alignment. That's what was waiting beneath the interference all along. Here's how you know you've stopped letting the mind drive. You don't need to explain your decisions. You feel peaceful without proof. You trust timing without urgency. You hold desire without gripping it. And in that space, your external life begins to shift in ways the mind never could have calculated. Opportunities arise from invisible intersections. Problems dissolve without strategy. Support shows up without asking. And your next step becomes obvious, not because it was deduced, but because it was received. The interference is no longer the voice in the room. It's just background static you no longer pay to amplify. Next, we will explore what begins to emerge once the noise is finally quieted. The signal you never knew was guiding you, waiting beneath the surface. Once the interference fades, the entire terrain changes. Suddenly, you start hearing something else, something quieter, older, more intelligent. A signal, not a voice in your head, not an emotion writing a reaction, not a flash of mental clarity, but frequency. Subtle, unmistakable, precise. It doesn't demand attention. It doesn't justify its presence. It doesn't explain itself. It simply is. And it only becomes available when the noise is receded, when your internal commentary stops hijacking your awareness. Let's be clear about what this signal is not. It's not instinct. Instinct is reactive. It's not ego. Ego is defensive. It's not desire. Desire can be misaligned. It's not thought. Thought is filtered. The signal is neutral resonance. It doesn't push you forward. It doesn't pull you back. It aligns you. It shows you. It moves with you. It's the frequency of your clearest trajectory. The stream that was always yours, beneath all the stories, scripts, and striving. And now that the noise has been quieted, it begins to emerge. You feel it in that sudden stillness when something just feels off. That body-softening awareness when something clicks. That moment of grace where you know exactly what to say or not say. That natural flow when your environment starts confirming what you already sensed. This is not coincidence. This is the signal beneath the noise. Here's how to recognize it when it speaks. It never argues. It never yells. It never repeats. It lands once, clearly, and then it waits for you to move or ignore it. That's why most people miss it. They're too used to mental repetition. They expect the signal to plead, prove, or persist. But this signal doesn't need to convince you. It only needs to match you. And when you're ready, it syncs. Not through mental understanding, but through energetic compatibility. Let's illustrate how this plays out. You've been trying to decide something for weeks. On paper, the options look similar, but something in you is heavy around one choice and light around another. Your mind doesn't have enough evidence, but your signal already knows. That lightness isn't preference. It's resonance. You choose the lighter path and watch everything begin to organize around it. The meeting goes smoother than expected. The resources come without struggle. The connection deepens instead of stalls. You didn't predict this. You didn't force it. You followed the signal. This is not magic. This is field mechanics. The moment your internal signal becomes clear, the field responds with matching configurations. You're not summoning outcomes. You're synchronizing timelines. That's why the signal is so powerful. It doesn't need to be dramatic. It doesn't need to be spiritual. It doesn't need to be logical. It just needs to be noticed. And the more often you notice it, the stronger it becomes. Because awareness amplifies access. Now here's what you must remember. The signal only operates in the now. Not in forecasts. Not in hypotheticals. Not in strategic planning. Only in the moment where presence is strongest and interference is weakest. That's why your greatest tool isn't thought. It's attunement. Being attuned means you're not filtering the moment through past stories or future fears. You're simply receiving, responding, adjusting. You're not moving based on preference. You're moving based on precision. And this is how reality begins to bend toward you. Not because you forced it, but because you finally matched it. Next, we will decode a truth that catches nearly everyone off guard. The outcomes you crave most, success, peace, connection, are not out of reach. But you're not yet tuned to them, because what you want isn't always what you're aligned to. You think you want something. You might even believe you want it badly. But the truth hiding beneath that desire is this. You are not aligned to the version of reality where it exists. And until that changes, the wanting becomes its own resistance. This isn't a flaw in your desire. It's a gap in your frequency. Desire is not the same thing as alignment. Wanting something doesn't automatically mean you're a match for it. You can want love while resonating with abandonment. You can want wealth while resonating with fear. You can want peace while living in a vibrational field of hypercontrol. The desire itself is innocent, but the frequency you carry is what determines your access. Let's strip away the illusions. You want clarity, but your mental state is cluttered. You want intimacy, but your field is guarded. You want freedom, but your nervous system is bracing. You want success, but your energy says, "Not yet. I'm not ready." So even though your conscious mind is declaring the goal, your unconscious field is repelling it. Not out of punishment, not because you're unworthy, but because the stream you're currently attuned to doesn't contain that version of reality. That's the essence of frequency mismatch. This is why effort often fails. You're taking action, building, trying, doing everything right on paper, but the results are inconsistent. Sometimes things click, and sometimes they slip away. You blame timing. You blame yourself. You blame external conditions. But the actual issue? You're aiming for outcomes from outside the stream that contains them. No amount of strategy can bypass a vibrational gap. This is why working harder often creates burnout instead of breakthrough. You're attempting to extract results from a timeline that's not coded to hold them. And until you shift your frequency, the results remain out of reach. Let's translate this practically. When you're not aligned with something, it doesn't feel like flow. It feels like tension. You're constantly chasing clarity, constantly negotiating with yourself, constantly second-guessing the signs. That's not alignment. That's pursuit under pressure. And the field doesn't respond to pressure. It responds to signal integrity. If you carry a frequency that screams not enough, the universe doesn't judge it, but it mirrors it. So you receive more experiences that confirm that signal. More delays, more almosts, more short circuits in timing, opportunity, and connection. The field isn't ignoring you. It's giving you what matches your actual broadcast. And your job isn't to beg harder. It's to match better. Here's how you begin. You stop assuming that just because you want it, you're ready for it. You stop demanding that the outer world change, while your inner signal stays the same. And you stop treating desire as a lever, something you pull harder to make things happen. Desire is only powerful when it's matched with coherence. That means your nervous system trusts the outcome. Your emotional field allows the timeline. Your observer isn't collapsing it prematurely with judgment or fear. Your actions aren't coming from lack. Your sense of self already carries the frequency of done. When these pieces align, desire becomes a portal, not a pursuit. That's when results speed up. That's when synchronicities stack. That's when obstacles seem to evaporate. That's when your reality begins to echo your intention, not because you forced it, but because you finally became a clean signal for it. And here's the twist. Once you're truly aligned to something, the wanting sensation fades. It doesn't feel like craving anymore. It feels like remembering. You don't feel anxious. You feel calm. You don't feel hungry for it. You feel congruent with it. That's how you know the match is complete. Not because the thing showed up yet, but because your vibration already contains it. That's alignment. Next, we will take the concept even further. Not just identifying the misalignment, but mastering the paradox of holding desire without attachment. Because now that you understand the gap, you're ready for the art of desiring without needing. Now that you know desire doesn't equal alignment, you're ready to unlock the paradox that mystifies most people on the path of transformation. Desire becomes most powerful when you no longer need what you desire. This isn't about pretending not to care. It's not emotional bypassing or faking detachment. It's about reaching the frequency where the presence or absence of the outcome no longer disrupts your signal. You desire it, but you're not grasping. You intend it, but you're not waiting. You welcome it, but you're not dependent on it to feel whole. This is desire without attachment, and it is the clearest frequency the field responds to. So let's dismantle the confusion. Most people mistake detachment for indifference. They think letting go means giving up. But letting go doesn't mean you abandon the desire. It means you release the distortion that surrounds it. The desperation, the fear, the timeline obsession, the identity wrapping, the belief that you're incomplete without it. That's the noise, and it weakens the signal. Desire is clean when it arises from wholeness. It's distorted when it arises from lack. Let's get even more precise. You want something. You can feel that it's aligned. You've stopped forcing. You've quieted the observer. You've matched the emotional signature. But now your mind begins to monitor. Where is it? Why hasn't it arrived yet? Is this working? And just like that, your desire is no longer clean. Because now you're introducing timeline resistance. You've reattached to needing it to arrive in a certain way, at a certain speed, to confirm that your process is valid. And that reattachment immediately drops your frequency, because you've now signaled to the field, I don't fully trust. Desire without attachment means you can hold the vision lightly, without letting the absence of evidence disrupt your resonance. You can want something without measuring your worth by it. You can move towards something without being defined by the pace of its arrival. You can enjoy the desire without gripping it for dear life. That's power. That's sovereignty. That's how the stream begins to move toward you. So how do you practice this? You begin by separating vision from urgency. You allow the desire to exist as a light inside you, one that doesn't burn or blind. You notice when your nervous system contracts because the thing hasn't arrived yet. You breathe into that moment. You soften. You open your field. You say, I allow it, but I don't chase it. I'm open to it, but I'm not hollow without it. And the moment your body believes that, the grip releases, the timeline relaxes, the glide resumes. Here's the most important marker. When your desire becomes playful, you've reached the correct frequency. It becomes a flirtation with the universe, not a demand, not a plea, not a contract with clauses and deadlines. It becomes an invitation to the field. This is where I'm going. Join me when it matches. That's the quantum tease. That's the signal the universe loves to echo. Because you're no longer vibrating in lack. You're vibrating in certainty without proof. That's rare. That's magnetic. That's powerful. And now, something subtle shifts. The desire remains, but it's no longer noisy. The timeline remains, but it's no longer urgent. The dream remains, but it's no longer an emotional trap. You can hold all of it, while being complete without it. That's the frequency of arrival. And this is the game changer. Desire stops being a sign of what you don't have, and starts becoming evidence of what you're already tuned to. Next, we will explore the greatest amplifier of that tuning state, the one condition that radically increases the clarity of your signal and the acceleration of your timeline stillness. Because stillness isn't inactivity, it's the superconductor of alignment. You've learned how to hold desire without attachment. You felt a shift when you stop chasing and start matching. Now you're ready to experience something deeper. Stillness, not the absence of motion, not the freezing of progress, but the condition in which energy becomes highly conductive. Stillness is not a pause. It's a portal. And in the quantum field, stillness acts as a superconductor, a state where signal clarity, coherence, and acceleration become exponentially amplified. This is where access sharpens. This is where timelines fold in on themselves. This is where interference disappears and momentum emerges with grace. But only when stillness is understood, not as idleness, but as an advanced frequency state. Let's get something straight. Most people associate stillness with waiting. Waiting for signs. Waiting for breakthroughs. Waiting for clarity. But waiting is passive. Stillness is responsive. Waiting implies you're not in control. Stillness proves that you already are. Stillness doesn't say, do nothing. It says, interfere with nothing. It doesn't demand silence of the environment. It cultivates silence of distortion. And when you enter that state, the signal from the quantum stream becomes not only audible, but unmistakable. Let's be even clearer. In a still state, you don't ask the universe questions with your mouth. You receive answers through your field. You don't visualize to control. You sense to calibrate. You don't race toward the outcome. You feel the outcome lean toward you. This is the energetic architecture that allows access to guidance you couldn't otherwise hear in motion. Because motion isn't always progress. It's often just noise. And most people are moving so fast, reacting so frequently, obsessing so habitually. They have no concept of what real stillness feels like. But here's the difference. Busyness feeds identity. Stillness dissolves it. That's why it scares people. Because stillness takes away your masks, your momentum stories, your rationalizations, your carefully constructed self-narratives. It leaves you naked, clear, receptive. And that's exactly what makes it so potent. So how do you activate stillness? Not by sitting cross-legged and pretending your thoughts don't exist. You activate stillness by withdrawing your participation from the mental loops. Let the thoughts occur. Let the sensations rise. Let the mind chatter. But don't identify. Don't amplify. Don't personalize. That's how the system quiets itself. Stillness isn't created by controlling thought. It's created by non-reaction to thought. And the moment you do that, a threshold is crossed. Time loosens. Tension leaves. Noise fades. And a different type of awareness enters. That awareness isn't mental. It's energetic. And it holds far more intelligence than anything you could think your way into. Here's what makes stillness a superconductor. In motion, you calculate. In stillness, you synchronize. In motion, you plan. In stillness, you perceive availability. In motion, you reach. In stillness, you receive. And the results speak for themselves. You stop chasing the person, and they call. You stop forcing the project, and the answer appears. You stop needing the sign, and it shows up without request. That's not magic. That's field alignment amplified by stillness. The universe doesn't need you to be louder. It needs you to be clearer. And nothing clears the signal faster than stillness held in trust. Here's how you know you've entered true stillness. Your nervous system relaxes without external permission. Your thinking slows, not by force, but by irrelevance. Your sense of time becomes flexible. Your preferences stop feeling urgent. Your emotional baseline moves toward neutrality. You're not frozen. You're fluid. You're not passive. You're present. And from that space, the glide returns, not because you hunted it down, but because you stopped crowding it out. Stillness didn't delay your timeline. It restored it. Stillness didn't slow you down. It positioned you in the exact stream where speed no longer required strain. Next, we will step through that portal into the intelligence that exists beyond your senses and your mind. Because now that you've entered stillness, you are finally able to access what's been waiting, the non-local signal of infinite guidance. Now that stillness has cleared the interference, now that the field is open, stable, and precise, you are finally able to tune into something most people never realize exists: non-local intelligence. This is not intuition as you've been taught. This is not gut instinct or unconscious pattern recognition. This is conscious resonance with information, insight, direction, and timelines that originate beyond your personal system. It is the ability to receive intelligence from outside your five senses, outside your memory banks, outside the mind-body container you've mistaken for the self, and it becomes available only when you're still enough to hear it. Let's be direct. Non-local intelligence doesn't come from your brain. It doesn't come from past experience. It doesn't come from logic, reasoning, or deduction. It comes from the field. It comes from the stream. It comes from coherence with larger intelligence patterns that are already structured, but invisible to linear cognition. When you access this, you stop trying to figure things out. You begin to receive complete awareness packets, fully formed impressions, ideas, decisions, and insights that feel like they came out of nowhere. But they didn't come from nowhere. They came from the stream you finally matched. Here's how you recognize it. A business move feels obvious, even if it wasn't on your radar yesterday. A conversation flows with a clarity you didn't prepare. A solution lands in your chest, not your head. A connection forms with someone who matches an unspoken frequency. You didn't plot this. You didn't plan this. You didn't manifest this through repetition. You matched the stream where this intelligence was already waiting. That's non-local access. And you're not channeling. You're not hearing voices. You're not seeing visions. You're interpreting field signal through your newly tuned awareness. Let's refine this further. Your field is a receptor. It's designed to interface with non-physical guidance systems. These systems are not separate from you. They are extensions of your broader intelligence structure. When you're stuck in your mind, the access point remains closed. But when your observer is quiet, your field becomes permeable. Information begins to arrive from dimensions you didn't even know you were part of. And that information is not metaphorical. It's specific. It's accurate. It's useful. You'll begin to notice ideas that solve problems before they emerge, timely words that shift relationships without rehearsal, creative downloads that build systems you didn't train for, decisions that bypass logic but lead to precision outcomes. These are not accidents. These are signal pickups from your extended intelligence architecture. You are no longer thinking your way through life. You are receiving your way forward. And you're doing it without stress, without seeking, without force, because the connection doesn't require effort. It only requires frequency match. So how do you strengthen this tuning? You trust what lands before your mind edits it. That quick flash of a no. That internal yes that made no sense on paper. That subtle redirect before you moved forward. That image, sentence, or emotional frequency that passed through you without context. These are not hallucinations. They're pings from a broader field of knowing. And the more you honor them, the more they strengthen. Because response amplifies signal. Each time you follow that inner click instead of second-guessing it, the field sends you more, and the pathway becomes unmistakable. Now you're living in a completely different reality. You're not reacting to what happens. You're responding to the version of life where you already know before it arrives. You're not relying on evidence. You're relying on alignment. You're not seeking permission. You're receiving instruction. And it's no longer coming from your fears, your patterns, or your memories. It's coming from the field, from non-local intelligence, from the version of you that's always been networked into something much larger. You're not learning anymore. You're tuning. You're not guessing. You're knowing. And that is the frequency the universe has been waiting to meet. Next, we will identify the hidden energetic blocks that silently repel your aligned outcomes, even when you're listening well. Because tuning in is only part of the process. The resistance still living in your field must now be cleared. You've cleared the interference. You've accessed stillness. You've tuned into non-local intelligence. Now let's talk about the invisible handbrake. What's silently repelling what you want, even when your alignment appears to be clean? Resistance. Not loud resistance. Not obvious sabotage. Micro-resistance. It's the energetic friction between what you say you want and what your nervous system actually believes is safe. You don't repel what you desire because you're unworthy. You repel it because part of you still perceives it as a threat. Let's be exact. You want visibility, but part of you equates being seen with judgment or danger. You want abundance, but your body still holds scarcity patterns from decades ago. You want intimacy, but your unconscious field still associates closeness with betrayal or loss. You want freedom, but your system is conditioned to feel safe only in control. And so your mind declares, I'm ready. But your field whispers, not yet. And the universe listens to the whisper, because that whisper, quiet as it may seem, is your dominant broadcast. So let's be even more direct. You're not manifesting contradictions. You're emitting them. And they don't show up as chaos. They show up as repetition. The same delays. The same patterns. The same misfires. Not because you aren't doing enough, but because the signal keeps looping around a resistance point your conscious mind isn't identifying. This is the part of energetic work most people ignore. They focus on thought. They focus on desire. They focus on high vibration. But they never ask, where in my system do I still feel unsafe with what I claim to want? That question holds the key. So what does micro-resistance feel like? It's not panic. It's not breakdown. It's not even fear. It's tension that hides behind logic. It's the mild unease before hitting publish. It's the story you tell yourself before asking for more. It's the physical tightness you ignore when opportunity appears. It's the excuse that sounds reasonable, but is really a protective loop. These subtle forms of pushback are the brakes on your quantum glide. You're stepping on the gas with your desires while tapping the brakes with your nervous system, and the vehicle stalls. Here's how you begin to shift this. You stop trying to overpower your resistance. You stop pretending it isn't there. You stop using performance as a substitute for coherence. And you start listening to the parts of you that feel the most unavailable to your desire. That version of you isn't wrong. It's just not updated. It's operating from an earlier configuration, one that hasn't yet realized it's safe to expand, one that still believes the old pattern is more survivable than the unknown. And no amount of mental override can force that part into congruence. You can't coerce yourself into alignment. You can only bring your field into agreement. So what does agreement look like? It's when every part of your being, mind, body, nervous system, subconscious, says yes without hesitation. That doesn't mean the yes is loud. It just means there's no internal pullback. The energy is clean. The timeline is open. The momentum accelerates. And this happens only when the internal resistance is not suppressed, but reintegrated. Reintegration is not about fighting fear. It's about introducing new frequency evidence. You teach your system, through action and signal, that it is safe to receive, safe to be seen, safe to have more, safe to stop protecting, safe to stop gripping, safe to feel good without waiting for it to be taken away. Here's how to feel that in real time. You're about to take action. Check the signal. Do you feel light or tight? Do you feel expansive or braced? Are you taking this step from inspiration or compensation? If the field isn't clear, pause. Not to retreat, but to recheck the match. Ask the part of you that hesitates what it actually believes. You might hear, if I succeed, I'll be alone. If I receive too much, I'll be resented. If I stop trying, I'll be forgotten. If I ask for more, I'll lose everything. These beliefs aren't rational. They're neurological echoes, and they must be addressed not with thought, but with signal. That's when real release happens. That's when repulsion turns into magnetism. And that's when the thing you've been wanting stops being blocked. Not because the universe changed, but because you finally did. Next, we will go after one of the deepest resistance patterns that wears a disguise of wisdom, the compulsive seeking loop. Because even seeking can become a frequency trap. There's a behavior that looks innocent, sometimes even noble. It feels proactive. It feels spiritual. It feels like progress. But it's one of the most effective ways to stay out of alignment, Seeking, endless learning, endless healing, endless searching, endless waiting for the next insight, the next teacher, the next confirmation. It feels like growth, but it's often just another way to delay your arrival. Because here's what no one wants to admit. Seeking is sometimes a camouflaged resistance to stillness, and that resistance keeps you outside the very stream you're chasing. Let's go deeper. When you seek, what are you really saying? You're saying, I don't have it yet. You're saying, I don't trust what I already know. You're saying, something out there will complete the signal. And that vibration of incompleteness becomes your dominant broadcast. So even as you consume wisdom, even as you read, listen, explore, study, your field is saying, I'm not there yet. And the field mirrors that exact statement, which means the more you seek, the more you delay becoming. Let's be clear, there's nothing wrong with learning. Expansion is natural. Curiosity is beautiful. But when seeking becomes a substitute for embodiment, you stay in a loop of preparation without arrival. You don't own your resonance. You outsource it. You delay presence by perpetually preparing for it. And that's the sabotage. Because the stream is only accessible in the now. Not after you've read one more book. Not after you've found the perfect method. Not after you've earned the right through effort. It's here. It's now. And it's blocked only by your insistence that it's not. Let's look at how this manifests. You're about to make a move, but instead, you watch another video. You feel the nudge to speak, but instead, you journal about it. You're ready to act, but then a new course distracts you. You feel clarity, but you override it with more questions. Each time you do this, you create energetic static, because your nervous system is trained to associate action with incompleteness. It says, I can't move until I know everything. And the universe says, you'll never know everything until you move. That's the dissonance, and that's what collapses glide. So how do you exit the seeking loop? You reclaim internal authority. You stop treating the next insight as your savior. You begin to trust your signal, even when it's faint, even when it doesn't come with proof, even when it contradicts what someone else said. You start embodying what you already know, because embodiment sends a far stronger signal than inquiry. And the moment your signal becomes coherent, the field opens, not just with information, with response, with configuration, with movement. Here's a shift that changes everything. You move from being a seeker to a tuner. A seeker waits for guidance to be delivered. A tuner aligns with the frequency that already holds it. One is externally dependent. The other is internally stabilized. And only one can access the stream. So next time you feel the urge to seek, pause. Ask, am I expanding? Or postponing embodiment? Is this wisdom confirming what I already know, or distracting me from trusting it? Is this search a celebration, or a delay tactic? Let those questions recalibrate your field. Let them bring you back to presence. Because the glide isn't found through external accumulation. It's activated through internal confirmation. Next, we will explore what happens when you stop asking, stop waiting, and stop deferring to some external grant of readiness. Because the next leap requires something radical, permission. And that permission must come from you. You've been trained to ask. Ask for clarity. Ask for signs. Ask for confirmation. Ask the universe. Ask a mentor. Ask the algorithm. Ask God, source, angels, guides, the collective unconscious. Asking has been your default posture. And it always sounds innocent. It sounds respectful. It sounds humble. It sounds spiritual. But underneath most asking lies a belief, far more corrosive than it appears. I need external validation to move. And that belief keeps your glide frozen. Because glide doesn't respond to please. It responds to internal authority. The permission you think you need has never been withheld. You've simply never claimed it. Let's look at the mechanics of this. You're in a state of aligned desire. You're ready to take action. You've cleared resistance. But instead of moving, you hesitate. And ask. You ask yourself, am I really ready? You ask others, what do you think I should do? You ask the field, please send a sign. Show me I'm on the right path. And with each question, you lower your signal integrity. You move from inner coherence to outer dependency. You shift from activation to suspension. You replace action with waiting disguised as worthiness. And in doing so, you break your own stream. Not because you're being tested, not because the universe is withholding, but because your frequency becomes inconsistent. Let's get brutally clear. The field doesn't need to give you permission. It needs to receive yours. When your entire energetic structure says yes, without explanation, without polling others, without stalling, you become a conductor for precision timing. But if your signal is interrupted by requests for validation, the stream delays. Not as punishment, as a mirror, because asking often reinforces the belief that you aren't already enough to choose, and that belief becomes your timeline. Here's what it means to activate the permission code. You stop waiting to feel perfectly ready. You stop needing proof before trust. You stop requiring universal applause before making your move. Instead, you anchor internally. This is what I'm choosing. Not because I was told to. Not because it's safe. Not because I'm sure how it will unfold. But because I have decided. That decision emits a signal that's unmistakable. It moves things into motion. It collapses timelines into convergence. It tells the field, I'm no longer available for delay. And everything begins to organize around that clarity. Let's look at what asking used to protect. It protected you from judgment. It protected you from uncertainty. It protected you from risk. It protected you from being wrong. But it also blocked your creative agency. It muted your resonance. It denied your authority. So let this be your unlearning. You don't need to earn readiness. You don't need to be given access. You don't need to prove your worthiness to choose. Your decision is the door. Your certainty is the signal. Your alignment is the evidence. You're not waiting on the universe. You're waiting on you. And that wait ends now. Next, we will explore what happens when you drop into the frequency state that exists beyond asking, beyond trying, beyond effort altogether. The neurological and energetic conditions of true flow, glide states. You've heard the word flow before. In psychology, it refers to a state of heightened immersion where skill meets challenge, time distorts, and performance sharpens. In spirituality, it's often linked with surrender, allowing, and alignment. In performance theory, it's regarded as a zone that athletes, artists, and high-level creators tap into, effortlessly producing results without the mental grind. But glide isn't just flow. It's a quantum-layered extension of it. It's flow without force. It's movement without mental taxation. It's momentum generated from field congruence, not dopamine highs or adrenaline. Glide is what happens when your nervous system, emotional field, and energetic structure reach a state of resonance so stable, you no longer have to fight your way into clarity. You simply are the clarity, and reality responds accordingly. Let's unpack this from a neuroscience perspective. When the brain enters what's commonly called a flow state, several things happen. The prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain responsible for self-criticism, identity maintenance, and time tracking, deactivates. Dopamine and norepinephrine increase, creating heightened attention and motivation, but without stress. Neural efficiency improves. You process faster, think less, and do more with less input. You move from beta wave activity, anxious, surface-level thinking, into alpha and theta ranges, the zone of glide. This is not philosophy. This is architecture. And you don't have to be a genius or a monk to access it. You just have to create the right conditions and remove the wrong ones. Here's what blocks the glide state. Over-identifying with your thoughts, operating from urgency, tracking time obsessively, seeking external validation mid-action, forcing outcomes instead of reading signal. Each of these activates your stress response. And when stress is dominant, flow shuts down. Your field contracts. Your brain shifts back into control mode, and glide is lost. So what opens the glide state? Inner stillness, permission-based action, releasing timeline pressure, emotional neutrality, tuning into frequency before movement. These are the precursors, and when they're stabilized, Your system enters what can only be described as resonant performance. You don't try harder. You simply move cleaner. Let's shift into quantum now. In glide states, your resonance becomes so accurate that the field begins preconfiguring itself for your arrival. This means you think of a person and they text you. You prepare for a meeting and every question you anticipated is already answered. You step into an unknown space and feel completely resourced. These aren't signs. They're symptoms of coherence. Glide means you're so matched to the stream that life organizes itself around your forward movement. You don't have to create momentum. You stabilize the frequency that already carries it. So how to hold glide? First, you recognize that the moment you feel like you're forcing, you've stepped out. You stop. You reset. You retune. Don't push. Don't press. Don't punish yourself for slipping. Just pause and ask, is this clean? If not, don't fix. Don't force. Don't hustle. Allow the signal to recalibrate by removing interference. That's how you return to the stream. That's how you restore glide. Glide doesn't feel intense. It feels inevitable. There's no internal debate, no tension, no emotional whiplash. There's only presence, movement, precision. It's not just flow. It's intelligent flow, where the stream you're in knows where you're going, and you trust it enough to stop grabbing the wheel. This is the true state of power, and it's not reserved for the elite. It's not limited to those in perfect conditions. It's accessible to anyone who has the discipline to stop distorting the field and the courage to let the signal lead. Next, we will explore what happens when you enter this state fully and surrender, not in weakness, but in resonance, because the glide deepens when you stop holding on and start tuning in to the frequency of surrender. Surrender is one of the most misunderstood energies in transformation work. To most people, it sounds like giving up, letting go of control, accepting fate, resigning. But surrender, true surrender, is none of those things. It's not weakness. It's not an action. It's not the absence of desire. Surrender is frequency integrity. Surrender is energetic positioning. Surrender is what happens when your internal field stops broadcasting interference signals and starts resonating cleanly with the stream. You don't surrender because you're tired. You surrender because you're finally available to glide. Let's separate what surrender is from what it isn't. Surrender is not about doing nothing. It's about doing the thing without gripping the outcome. Surrender is not detachment from direction. It's detachment from distortion. Surrender is not stopping action. It's removing resistance from action. And here's what it actually means. You stop trying to manage every variable. You stop injecting urgency into the timeline. You stop analyzing whether it's working. You stop measuring your worth by what happens next. You don't abandon the desire. You allow it to arrive without force. That's surrender. That's the frequency that tells the universe, I'm no longer an obstacle to what I've already been calling in. Surrender becomes available only when you've stabilized certain thresholds. Stillness in your field, clarity of signal, trust in non-local intelligence, release of attachment to timeline. These aren't mental checkpoints. They're energetic permissions. You don't get into surrender by saying, I surrender. You get into it by creating a field where no contradiction exists. You've stopped fighting your own stream. You've stopped micromanaging the quantum. You've stopped using control as compensation for fear. And that's when glide becomes gravity. Reality begins bending toward you, without needing your input at every turn. Here's what surrender feels like in the body. You breathe deeper without trying. You feel light in the chest. You stop chasing thoughts. You move without rehearsing. You feel no urge to explain your path. You sense that it's already done, even if it hasn't physically arrived yet. Surrender isn't passive. It's precise. It aligns your internal instrument so the external world can respond. Because remember, it's not about what you want. It's about what you match. Surrender tunes you to the version of reality where the outcome exists, without needing to fight for it. This is why surrender is the gateway to velocity. Most people associate action with speed. They think doing more creates more movement. They think effort equals momentum. But quantum glide doesn't respond to effort. It responds to alignment with ease. The less resistance you emit, the faster the field can rearrange around you. And surrender removes resistance at scale. That's why things magically begin to shift in the surrender state. Messages arrive. Obstacles vanish. Delays collapse. Opportunities circle back. Timing becomes uncanny. But none of that is coincidence. It's signal response. It's your life reorganizing itself to match your non-interfering frequency. Now here's the paradox. You can't surrender to get something. That's just another form of control. True surrender is when you're fully aligned with receiving, but also fully free without it. You allow the possibility. You trust the intelligence. You honor your signal. And then, you let go of needing the outcome to define your state. That is a rare energy, and that's why it's so magnetic. The field doesn't need your control. It needs your coherence. And surrender is the fastest way to return to it. Next, we will explore what happens when you no longer need to manifest anything at all, because once surrender is embodied, the desire is no longer the mechanism. It's the match that changes everything. You've been told for years that you need to manifest. Write it down. Visualize it. Say the affirmations. Hold the vision. Set the intention. Call it in. But here's the truth you're ready for now. You don't need to manifest anything. You need to match. Manifestation is often built on a faulty premise. I want something I don't currently have, so I must attract it. But in the quantum field, you are not attracting what you want. You are selecting the version of reality that already contains it. The selection is made not with thought, but with frequency. So you don't manifest love. You match the version of you who already lives inside it. You don't manifest abundance. You match the self that no longer questions its presence. You don't manifest clarity. You match the emotional signature of knowing. And when the match occurs, the external must respond. Not by magic, by mechanics. Let's call this what it is. Manifestation often reinforces the idea that the thing you want is far away, that it must be attracted, that it must be summoned, that it's missing, that the field is separate from your internal state. But none of that is true. The field is not withholding. It's reflecting. And when you match the signal of what you once thought was far away, you find it was always accessible, just not compatible with your previous vibration. Let's break down how matching works. Matching happens at the level of emotion, expectation, nervous system regulation, self-concept, frequency field coherence. It's not enough to think about what you want. You have to exist in the same vibrational bracket as the version of reality that contains it. That means, if you want freedom, you must stop clenching your nervous system around survival. If you want expansion, you must stop defaulting to self-compression. If you want joy, you must stop making stress your baseline signal. If you want love, you must stop using distrust as your field's primary protection layer. The universe doesn't respond to your wish list. It responds to your state. And when the state changes, the reality does too. So how do you know if you're matching or manifesting? Manifesting feels like trying. Matching feels like becoming. Manifesting carries urgency. Matching carries inevitability. Manifesting feels incomplete until the thing arrives. Matching feels complete before it does. And that's the key. When you're truly matched, you no longer feel like something's missing. You're not waiting for it to happen. You're living in the stream where it already is. And so the external must follow, because it's no longer being asked to bridge a gap. You've already crossed it internally. This changes everything. You stop asking, how do I get it? And you start asking, what does the version of me who already lives inside this feel like now? You stop scripting outcomes. You start reading internal signals. You stop clinging to rituals. You start stabilizing resonance. And most importantly, you stop waiting, because the match itself becomes the reward. Now here's the final shift. When you stop manifesting and start matching, desire transforms into confirmation. It's no longer a hunger for what's absent. It's a recognition of what's available. You don't need to dream harder. You need to tune more cleanly. And from that place, things arrive without demand. People shift without pressure. Opportunities unfold without pursuit. because you're not calling them in. You're standing in the stream where they were always scheduled to meet you. Next, we will explore how the field responds when your matching is precise, and the feedback system that confirms alignment, synchronicity. Because synchronicity isn't randomness, it's your report card from the quantum. You're matching the stream. You've moved beyond manifesting. You're no longer broadcasting lack. Now comes the feedback. Synchronicity. It's not magic. It's not luck. It's not a fun little coincidence. It's the quantum field giving you a live progress report. It's the universe telling you, in real time, this is aligned. Keep going. Or, this isn't clean. Adjust now. When synchronicity shows up, it's not to impress you. It's to confirm you've reached a state of measurable vibrational alignment. And when it doesn't show up, that silence is also a message, because the field never stops speaking. But your signal has to be tuned in to hear what it's saying. Let's be precise. Synchronicity is the mirrored reflection of your current frequency. When you're on the right stream, conversations finish your thoughts. Random strangers speak your inner questions aloud. Articles, songs, books fall into your path with eerily perfect timing. You make a choice, and within minutes something clicks into place, without planning it. It feels like the whole universe is conspiring to support your movement forward. But it's not conspiracy. It's coherence. Your alignment has reached such a state of signal purity that the field responds like an echo chamber, reverberating your frequency back through time, people, and events. So let's dismantle a popular misconception. Synchronicity isn't a reward. It's a reflection. It doesn't arrive because you meditated more or visualized harder. It arrives because your current field configuration is broadcasting cleanly enough to interact with matching outcomes. If the mirror isn't responding, it's not ignoring you. It's showing you your current state, and that state might still contain hidden resistance, unconscious sabotage, misaligned emotional baselines, identity structures that don't match your desire. Synchronicity is honest. It won't flatter your ego. It won't show up to please your effort. It will only appear when you're truly available to receive what you claim to be ready for. Here's how to track synchronicity in real time. Start with a baseline state of presence. Notice repetition without hunting for it. Observe what themes, phrases, patterns, people, and moments keep resurfacing without being forced. These are your energetic checkpoints. Ask, does this repetition uplift me or alert me? Is the universe showing me a green light, or a pattern loop I need to exit? Is this reinforcement, or a signal to correct course? Your job is not to chase signs. It's to interpret them accurately, because signs don't predict the future. They confirm your present resonance. Let's use examples. You've just released a desire to control your business growth. You surrendered the need to prove your worth through output. Within 24 hours, 3 clients reach out unsolicited. That's not an accident. That's the quantum field rearranging now that you're no longer blocking it. Or you decide to finally honor your creativity. You commit to building something real from your inspiration. Suddenly, you meet someone who offers you the exact resource you were missing. That's not random. That's alignment activating timelines. But here's the key. These moments are less about the events themselves and more about the state that allowed them. It's your energetic state that determines whether you see synchronicity as magical or mechanical. Now let's flip the lens. You've been working hard to launch something. You're pushing, overthinking, tweaking endlessly, but you're receiving no responses, no movement, no ease. That's feedback too. That doesn't mean give up. It means pause, reassess. Are you aligned or just attached? Are you tuned in or trying to force a frequency match? Are you acting from inspiration or obligation? Because when synchronicity disappears, it's not to punish you. It's to signal that your signal is currently incoherent, and incoherence never glides. So how do you recalibrate? Return to presence. Restore stillness. Release the need for proof. Re-enter the field not as a beggar, but as a matched participant. And then watch. Synchronicity never vanishes. It only waits for coherence. Next, we will explore why certain goals land effortlessly while others keep falling short, and the exact reasons behind that difference. Because some dreams never arrive not because they're too big, but because they're built on the wrong signal. You've seen it. Some things in your life just flow. You barely try, and doors open. You feel the impulse, and results show up almost immediately. You think about something once, and it lands in your reality. And then there are the other things. The goals you've obsessed over, worked for, visualized, journaled about, fought through, tried everything in your toolkit to manifest, and yet nothing. Stuck, silent, stalled. Why? The answer has nothing to do with how deserving you are. It has everything to do with what the goal is made of. Some goals are constructed from alignment. Others are constructed from compensation. And the universe always knows the difference. Let's break this down. An aligned goal emerges from a clear frequency. It feels light in your body. You don't obsess over it. You don't force it to prove anything. It comes from a clean yes, not a noisy need. A compensatory goal, however, is usually built on top of a wound. It often comes from a desire to prove your value, a fear of being irrelevant, a story of needing to succeed, to feel loved, a reaction to not being chosen in the past, a comparison loop that says, they have that, so I must need it too. Even if the goal looks great on paper, if it's born from a fracture, it will create friction, and friction prevents flow. Let's get practical. You set a goal to earn a certain amount. It sounds good, feels powerful, looks smart, but your body tightens every time you think about it. Your nervous system enters hypervigilance. You feel like you're already behind, even though the timeline just started. You monitor your progress daily, and every delay feels like personal failure. That goal isn't aligned. It's reactive. You're not building toward expansion. You're compensating for a version of you that still feels unsafe. And the universe doesn't judge that, but won't organize itself around a frequency you haven't stabilized. So how do you tell the difference? Ask, does this goal energize me or exhaust me? Do I feel urgency or inspiration? Am I trying to prove something or become something? Can I hold the desire lightly, or do I need it to complete my identity? Aligned goals don't demand that you become someone else. They emerge from the clearest version of you that already is. And when your goal matches your signal, you stop needing to chase it. You glide toward each other. Now here's the shift. Let go of goals that were built from past pain. Let go of timelines that were created by fear. Let go of outcomes that were never yours to begin with. Let go of desires that were never clean. This doesn't mean give up. It means upgrade. You recalibrate your goals to match who you are now, not who you were when you decided you needed that thing to feel enough. That's how the stream realigns. That's how the results accelerate. Not because you changed the dream, but because you changed who was dreaming it. So the goals that work, they work because you're not asking them to fix you. You're not pretending you're ready. You are ready. You're not tied to the outcome. You're married to the signal. You're not needing it to validate you. You've already validated your existence, and that's why the door opens. Not because you pushed it, because you vibrated in front of it with full congruence, and the quantum stream recognized its match. Next, we will meet the intelligence that already lives inside that version of you, who has always held the clarity, the timing, the direction, the one broadcasting signal while you were chasing the noise. Future you. There's a version of you that already lives inside the timeline you keep trying to access. That version isn't theoretical. It's not a vision board fantasy. It's not an imaginary concept you reach toward when you feel lost. That version is real, alive in the quantum field, fully formed, fully available, and it's been broadcasting the entire time. Not in sentences, not in logic, not in 5-step plans, but through frequency, through emotion, through resonance. Future you has never been waiting for your transformation. They've been waiting for your reception. Let's talk about quantum time. In this field, time is not linear. All versions of you exist simultaneously on different frequencies. There's a version of you who gave up. There's a version who exploded with success. There's a version who stayed hidden. There's a version who moved anyway. There's a version who already lives in the reality you think is coming someday. And here's the key. Each version is broadcasting its signal right now. So the question is never, where do I go from here? The question is, which version am I currently tuned into? Because the field doesn't respond to your wishes. It responds to your alignment with the version of you who's already living what you desire. Let's break this down. Future you isn't trying to teach you something. They're transmitting, and their signal is always clean. But your reception depends on your current field configuration. When you're tuned to urgency, you miss it. When you're caught in comparison, you distort it. When you're obsessed with how, you block it. When you wait for proof before trust, you shut it down. But when you get still, when you soften, when you match the emotion of what's already done, you begin to receive. And what comes through feels less like instruction and more like remembering. This is what true guidance feels like. A sudden clarity that doesn't come from thought. A physical certainty in your body without explanation. A knowing that overrides doubt, even if it contradicts logic. A pull toward action that doesn't require motivation. That's not imagination. That's signal reception. You're tuning into a broadcast that never shut off, just like a radio station you forgot to scan for. Future you is that station, and it's broadcasting the coordinates of a timeline where your glide is fully stabilized. Let's go even deeper. The idea of finding your purpose often leads to endless loops of overthinking. But when you listen to future you, purpose becomes irrelevant. Why? Because direction is embedded in the frequency. When you tune in, you don't need to ask, what should I do next? You feel what moves next. It emerges, not from pressure, but from precise resonance. You stop chasing signs. You start translating signal. And the signal always leads to coherence. Not safety. Not comfort. Not popularity. Coherence. Because future you doesn't care about external metrics. Future you is concerned only with field alignment. And when alignment is intact, reality bends. So how do you listen more clearly? Stop asking, what should I do? Start asking, what would the version of me who already lives in that outcome feel right now? And then match it. Not conceptually, energetically. You don't need the full picture. You only need the emotion that carries the next right step, because that emotion is the map. That emotion is the interface between your current field and the timeline future you is calling you into. And the clearer your emotional body becomes, the louder the signal gets. Next, we will learn how to read that emotional signal with surgical precision, how to use it as dimensional GPS. Because emotions aren't just feedback, they are directional frequencies pointing to your true timeline. You've been told your emotions are valid. You've been told they're important. You've been told they reflect your inner world. But here's what you haven't been told. Your emotions are dimensional GPS, not just reactions. Not just responses, not just moods. They are frequency indicators showing you, every second, what timeline you're currently aligned to. That means you're never lost. You're never unclear. You're never really confused. You've just forgotten how to read your own compass. Let's get specific. Every emotional state carries a frequency signature. Peace is not passive. It's a marker of field alignment. Frustration is not weakness. It's a sign of mismatch between your current state and your intended stream. Joy is not just pleasure, it's resonance confirmation. Anxiety is not random. It's your system alerting you to signal interference. These aren't philosophical ideas. They're practical mechanics. Because the quantum field can't hide its response to you. It shows you everything through your emotional body. So, what does this mean in practice? It means you stop trying to feel better. And you start reading your feelings accurately. You don't shame your fear. You study its signal. You don't chase joy. You use it to track the field. You don't bypass anger. You ask what boundary or alignment was just crossed. You don't suppress guilt. You check whether you're violating your internal agreement. Because emotions don't ask for control. They ask for translation. Now here's where it gets precise. Every moment you feel an emotion, you're getting a real-time indicator of trajectory. You're being shown, whether your current thought is compatible with your aligned self, whether your planned action is tuning you in or tuning you out, whether the space you're in supports or suppresses your highest resonance, whether the choice in front of you expands or contracts your field. And the compass never lies. You may ignore it, you may override it, you may numb it, but the signal remains. And until you honor it, you'll stay looped in timelines that don't glide. Here's how to begin tracking with precision. Start with a pause. Before making a choice, pause. Before hitting send, pause. Before saying yes, pause. Then ask, what does my field feel like right now? Is there clarity or contraction? Does this action stabilize me or spike my nervous system? Am I moving from truth or trying to compensate? This isn't about overthinking. It's about restoring your system's authority. Because your body knows, your energy knows, your field knows. You just haven't been listening consistently. Now let's clear a myth. People say follow your feelings, as if all feelings are created equal. They're not. Some feelings are distortions. Some are echoes. Some are field residues from other people entirely. That's why discernment is critical. The question isn't what am I feeling? It's what is the source of this feeling? Did this arise from my true self or my protective identity? Is this my emotion or an empathic entanglement? Is this fresh data or a recycled trauma loop? You don't heal by analyzing emotions to death. You shift timelines by decoding their guidance. This is where the compass becomes your superpower. You no longer need to guess. You no longer need to outsource clarity. You no longer need to wait for the future to reveal your direction. Your emotions reveal it right now. Not through logic, not through charts, not through external feedback, but through the precision frequency of your state. And when you begin navigating life this way, you stop forcing, you stop stalling, you stop misaligning, because you always know, instantly, when you're tuned correctly. Next, we'll examine how microscopic, seemingly insignificant choices can shift entire timelines, and why tiny, aligned moves matter more than any massive transformation ever could. You've been trained to believe that change requires drama, big moments, massive pivots, explosive breakthroughs, public declarations. But real timeline shifts don't usually come with fireworks. They come from micro-actions, tiny movements, quiet yes, subtle no's. These small, almost invisible choices determine the stream you're tuning into more than any grand gesture ever will. Because the quantum doesn't respond to theatrics. It responds to consistency of signal. And every micro-action you take either tightens that signal or scatters it. Let's start with a fundamental principle. Every decision you make emits a frequency. Each time you say yes when you mean no. Each time you delay something your future self would act on instantly. Each time you seek validation for a knowing you already have. You tune yourself slightly off. And slight deviations don't feel like catastrophe. They feel like almost aligned. But almost aligned keeps you in nearly their timelines. Timelines that tease clarity, momentum, synchronicity, but never fully stabilize. The micro-actions are the tuning fork. They either clean the frequency or fracture it. Let's be exact. You wake up and instinctively reach for your phone, despite knowing it's not the state you want to open your day with. That's not just habit. That's a micro-action pulling you into a lower coherence stream. You feel a creative impulse rise, but you wait until conditions are better. That's not just procrastination. That's a micro-denial of your stream's instruction. You feel your body say stop, but you say yes to please someone else. That's not kindness. That's a micro-fracture in your energetic integrity. None of these are dramatic, but they're directional. And enough of them, repeated daily, recalibrate your entire trajectory. Now let's flip it. You pause before reacting to a trigger. You drink water instead of caffeine when your system is fried. You choose stillness for 30 seconds instead of overthinking the next move. You act on an inner nudge without asking anyone for permission. These aren't huge wins. They're alignment anchors. And when you stack them, you start warping timelines in your favor. Not because you made a plan, but because you kept matching the field future you is already stabilized in. Here's the practical truth. You're not being tested by the universe. You're being tuned by your own actions. Each move you make either confirms your alignment or corrects it. And the moment you start honoring micro moves with macro respect, your glide stabilizes. Your frequency becomes unmistakable. Your direction becomes obvious. And time begins to collapse. Why? Because you've stopped asking for huge shifts and started behaving like the version of you who doesn't need them. That version doesn't wait. That version doesn't delay micro-corrections. That version doesn't compromise internal knowing for external applause. That version just moves. You don't change your life in one leap. You tune into the timeline where the leap already happened and become the person who naturally lives there. And that becoming is measured not in your affirmations, but in your micro-actions. Track them, honor them, stack them, and watch your timeline respond with absolute clarity. Next, we will explore how to detect instantly when you're slipping back into force mode, even subtly, and how to shift gently but precisely back into glide. You've stabilized microalignment. You've honored your internal compass. You've begun responding to future use signal. But here's the challenge. Force energy is sneaky. It doesn't always show up as intense pressure. It doesn't always scream, push harder. It doesn't always wear the costume of desperation. Sometimes force whispers. Sometimes it disguises itself as responsibility. Sometimes it hides inside your highest intentions. And if you don't learn to detect its signature early, you'll drift back into effort mode without even realizing it. So let's get surgical. Here's how you know you're forcing again. You feel the need to prove. Force often masquerades as value creation. You're doing the thing, but underneath it, you're asking, will they see me now? Will they know I'm good enough? Will this be enough? That's not creation. That's compensation. The moment your energy is trying to prove, you're out of the glide. You're thinking more than you're sensing. When you're aligned, action feels obvious. Not because it's easy, but because it's clean. But when your mind is rehearsing the same decision, looping logic, weighing imaginary outcomes, you've left signal and entered force. You're over-communicating. You find yourself explaining too much, justifying your decisions, making sure people understand why you're doing what you're doing. This isn't communication. It's an energetic leak. And it's a sign you're not anchored in your own field anymore. You feel urgency in your body, not inspiration. Urgency, the kind that tightens your chest. That makes your to-do list feel like survival. That erodes peace under the guise of progress. Urgency is the frequency of misalignment. It tells you your current action is not sourced from truth, but from fear. You're tracking outcomes obsessively. You check the numbers constantly. You reread messages. You refresh dashboards. Why? Because you're not trusting the stream. You're trying to force results through monitoring. That's not flow. That's friction. Now here's the key. Force doesn't mean you're broken. It just means you've lost touch with the signal. It's not a failure. It's a frequency slip. And the moment you detect it, you can shift. But not through willpower. Through signal recalibration. Here's how. Pause. Don't fix. Don't fight. Don't double down. Just stop. Breathe into your field. Not shallow chest breaths. Low, slow, grounding inhales that anchor you back into presence. Ask one clean question. Is this action emerging from clarity or compensation? Your body knows. If there's tension, it's compensation. If there's peace, it's clarity. Realign by dropping urgency. Urgency is never a requirement of alignment. If it can't happen from stillness, it's not your stream. Let go of needing it to work. You're not gliding to get a result. You're gliding because the signal said yes. Return to that. Return to signal purity, not performance. This is mastery, not never slipping, but catching the slip faster each time. The more tuned you become, the quicker you'll spot the energetic texture of force. You'll feel the friction before it grows. You'll notice the grip before it tightens. You'll catch the micro shift before it distorts your field. And with each correction, Your glide sharpens. Your energy clears. Your impact magnifies. Your stream speeds up. Why? Because you're no longer fighting for results. You've become a vessel for results to flow through. Next, we'll go deeper into the power of stillness, not as a break, but as a technology that lets you glitch the matrix and collapse timelines from pure signal stability. Stillness is not the opposite of movement. It is movement of a higher order. It looks like nothing, feels like calm, appears inactive. But what's happening beneath it? Quantum realignment, timeline collapse, signal acceleration. Stillness doesn't slow things down. It removes noise, so the glide can resume without interruption. It's the anti-force, the field reset, the portal to a cleaner version of now. And when you learn to access it intentionally, you begin glitching the matrix. Let's be precise. Most people think stillness is a pause between productivity, a reset before the next sprint, a timeout from effort. But here, you now understand. Stillness is not an action. It is non-interference. It's the moment when the ego stops touching the stream, the moment when the signal is allowed to continue unfiltered. And in that moment, the entire simulation adjusts, not by what you do, but by what you stop distorting. When you enter deep stillness, two things happen simultaneously. You stop adding noise to the quantum field. You begin receiving signal that was always present, but drowned out by effort. This includes timeline threads that want to meet you, people vibrating at your new frequency, decisions that become obvious without thinking, next steps that feel magnetic, not logical. You're not inventing any of this. You're not downloading from some external realm. You're clearing distortion so that what's always been trying to reach you finally can. Stillness becomes a form of travel. Think of time as layers of overlapping timelines. Each possibility is running simultaneously. You're tuned to one, but the others are only one shift away. Stillness doesn't push you into the new one. It collapses the current misaligned one. And when the current stream dissolves, what's left? The one you were too noisy to reach before. That's why so many people have spontaneous clarity, life-changing awareness, or unexplainable shifts after entering deep silence. It's not random. It's recalibration. Stillness becomes a dimensional accelerator. You skip entire cycles, not by pushing, but by not pushing at all. You don't have to be a monk. You don't have to meditate for hours. You only need to create clean spaces in your day where nothing is broadcast, except peace. And inside that peace, the field speaks louder than thought, because thought speaks in words. But signal speaks in arrangement, in instant coherence, in feelings of certainty without explanation, in doors that open without plans. That's what stillness lets through. You may be asking, how do I know I'm in real stillness? Here's how you'll know. The mind quiets without you forcing it. The desire to label or define disappears. The sensation of next evaporates. There's no hunger to fix or upgrade anything. You feel connected to life without needing anything from it. That's not numbness. That's quantum neutrality, the state from which the strongest signal emerges. And the more often you visit this space, the more stable your glide becomes, because reality stops echoing your noise and begins mirroring your silence. The field rearranges, not because you controlled it, but because you got out of its way. Next, we move into the subtle mechanics of your energetic field, your aura, and how its current frequency acts as a real-time tuner for your quantum trajectory. Every thought you have, every emotion you sustain, every micro-action you take, leaves a trace. That trace gathers in your field, and your field becomes your frequency. This is not metaphor. This is structure. Your aura is not a mystical glow. It's your energetic architecture, a constantly updating feedback loop that says to the quantum, here's who I currently am, respond accordingly. And the quantum always does. So the question is never, why isn't life shifting? The question is, what is my field currently broadcasting? Your aura is a tuner. It either amplifies your glide or scrambles it. It's the difference between getting intuitive hits that lead to breakthroughs or recycling old narratives that lead to detours. attracting people who feel like destiny, or drawing in patterns you've already outgrown, feeling peace when you act, or feeling hesitation, even in your best moments. The difference isn't luck. It's aura hygiene. And most people, they're dragging around static in the form of unchecked thoughts, unresolved emotion, and unconscious loops. That static is not neutral. It influences your stream. So let's get clear. What corrupts the aura? Unprocessed emotional residue, unspoken resentment, chronic negative self-talk, people you've entangled with but haven't energetically released, environments that override your natural rhythm, living out of alignment with your internal yes. These aren't just mood disruptors. They alter your signal. They create energetic overlays that confuse the field. You say, I want to glide. But your aura says, I'm still rehearsing old wounds. And the quantum listens to the field, not the wish. Now let's talk cleaning. Aura hygiene isn't aesthetic. It's foundational. Here are the methods that tune your field back to clarity. Stillness practice. As you've just learned, stillness interrupts static and resets baseline resonance. Emotional honesty. Speak what's true in the moment it's true. Unspoken truths collect in your field like psychic dust. Energetic disentanglement. Pull your energy back from relationships, agreements, and mental loops that no longer support your current frequency. Presence rituals. Even 60 seconds of full sensory presence in nature, breath, or silence recalibrates the signal. Sound plus frequency therapy. Tuning forks, music, or frequencies like 528 Hz or 963 Hz directly influence aura repair at the vibrational level. Permission withdrawal. Audit where you're still giving others psychic access to your field. Revoke anything unreciprocated or unconscious. You're not trying to become pure. You're reestablishing clarity, because clarity collapses confusion, and confusion is what bends your stream out of shape. Let's go deeper. The aura isn't just a reflector. It's a field emitter. Your aura teaches the quantum how to treat you. If your field is sharp, sovereign, and stabilized, the world responds with synchronicity, right-fit people, and frictionless movement. If your field is foggy, entangled, and distorted, you get missed signals, delays, and repetitive cycles. So start seeing your aura like an instrument. Tune it daily. Notice when it goes dull. Sharpen it through choice, presence, and intentional repair. You may already feel it. The moment your aura is clean, people act differently around you. You say less, but they hear more. You do less, but life responds more vividly. That's not magic. That's broadcast integrity. Your field begins pulling reality toward it without speaking a word. Because now, the stream can find you, with no interference in between. Next, we'll uncover the subtle way other people's fields distort your trajectory, and how to recognize who's corrupting your stream. You've tuned your field. You've cleaned your signal. You've begun gliding with clarity. And then, a conversation pulls you into doubt. A connection leaves you drained. A well-meaning friend plants a question that fractures your certainty. Your frequency didn't suddenly change. It got entangled with someone else's. People are not just personalities. They're fields. They're streams. And each one carries its own vibrational architecture, which means every interaction is a frequency exchange. Every relationship is a tuning fork. Every presence either amplifies or dilutes your stream. So let's be honest. Who's been distorting your frequency without you realizing it? This is not about blame. It's about signal awareness. Because when you interact with another human, you're not just exchanging words. You're overlapping fields. And if their field is misaligned with your trajectory, coded with unconscious scarcity, driven by fear-based timelines, anchored in control, victimhood, or suppression, then their stream will begin to bleed into yours. Not because you're weak, but because energy seeks coherence. And unless you're fiercely aware of your field, you'll unconsciously begin to harmonize with the strongest or loudest vibration in the room. That's how glide collapses. Let's get specific. You're excited about a shift, a new project, a move, a download from future you. You share it with someone whose field is still ruled by logic, scarcity, or unresolved trauma. They say something reasonable, something grounded, something practical, and suddenly your certainty dissolves. That's not feedback. That's frequency invasion. Or, you're in a clean space. You've maintained stillness. Synchronicities are showing up like breadcrumbs. Then you spend an hour with someone emotionally chaotic, someone addicted to urgency, drama, or mental loops. Afterward, you feel scrambled, disoriented, disconnected from your signal. You didn't do anything wrong. You simply absorbed a stream that doesn't match your glide. And this happens constantly, until you become field conscious. Now here's where it gets subtle. The most dangerous entanglements are not the obvious ones. It's not the toxic ex. It's not the overt narcissist. It's not the person who clearly drains you. It's the almost aligned ones. The people who support your journey, but secretly resent it. The people who speak high vibration, but live from fear. The friends who mean well, but are unconsciously invested in your past identity staying intact. These are the field distorters you don't notice until your stream starts glitching again. Not because they intend harm, but because their frequency can't hold space for your expansion. And every moment spent unconsciously inside their stream weakens your own. So how do you recognize them? Here are the signs. You feel subtly contracted after interacting, like your signal dimmed. You begin questioning your glide or adjusting your choices after their feedback. You find yourself over-explaining, downplaying, or packaging your evolution to make them more comfortable. Your field feels more scattered, more urgent, or more mentally noisy after exposure. Pay attention. These are not emotional reactions. They're field data points. They tell you what's influencing your stream in real time. And your job is not to fix those people. It's to notice the distortion and respond from sovereignty. Next, we'll unlock the art of detuning from people silently, without resistance, guilt, or emotional warfare. It's not separation. It's signal preservation. When someone's field distorts yours, the reflex is often to explain, to help them understand, to teach them your new awareness, to show them the value of your stream. This is noble, but often it's also futile, because trying to fix, rescue, or convert someone into resonance automatically tunes you to their signal, and that defeats the entire point. So what's the move? Detune. Not dramatically, not emotionally, not with conflict, but quietly, elegantly, powerfully, because detuning isn't rejection, it's recalibration. Let's make this clear. You don't need to explain why you're pulling back. You don't need to prove that their frequency is misaligned. You don't need to dissect their behavior or process your every feeling with them. You just need to remove your field from theirs. Here's how you'll know it's time. When conversations become repetitive energetic loops. When presence with them costs you clarity afterward. When your body tightens before seeing their name. When guilt keeps you connected more than love. This is not cruelty. This is signal protection. Because your field is the interface between you and the quantum stream. If it's constantly absorbing distortion, you can't glide. Now, what does detuning look like? It looks like answering less quickly, allowing silence to replace ritual contact, not feeding energetic hooks with emotional reactions, holding a clean, internal no, even if your mouth hasn't said it yet. Most detuning doesn't require confrontation. It requires withdrawal of energetic availability. That means no longer being emotionally on call for frequencies you've outgrown. That means no longer sourcing identity from relational patterns that used to define you. That means letting their stream run without trying to change it. Because you're not responsible for fixing their field. You're responsible for tuning yours. Now let's address the guilt. When you detune, some people will feel it. Some will push back. Some will accuse you of being distant, selfish, cold. Here's the truth. Most of that reaction isn't about you. It's about losing access to the version of you that made their field feel more comfortable. You weren't just a person to them. You were a stabilizer, a mirror, a regulator for their chaos. And when you stop performing that role, their discomfort emerges. That's okay. You're not here to regulate other people's alignment anymore. You're here to preserve your own. Now here's what happens when you detune well. Your clarity sharpens. Your glide stabilizes. New, high coherence people begin entering your field. Opportunities appear that weren't accessible in the distorted stream. Your energy regenerates faster, and you no longer feel the need to explain your evolution, because your frequency speaks louder than your words. And when your field is clean, you no longer need permission to live in alignment. You just do. And those who are meant to tune with you will, not through force, through frequency. Next, we explore how to build boundaries that don't resist or block, but filter energy intelligently, protecting your stream without emotional armor. You've detuned from the distorters. You've stopped trying to fix their frequency. Now it's time to upgrade something fundamental, your boundaries. But not the kind you were taught. Not walls. Not emotional locks. Not rigid lines drawn from fear or pain. Quantum boundaries are different. They don't block. They filter. They don't resist. They refine. They don't defend. They tune. Because in the quantum, protection is never about separation. It's about signal hygiene. Let's reframe what a boundary really is. A boundary is not saying, "Don't come near me." A boundary is saying, "Only that which aligns with my stabilized frequency has access to my field." And that means, you don't have to explain your distance. You don't have to justify your decisions. You don't even need to communicate your lines. You simply become unavailable to misaligned frequency, not through tension, but through non-resonance. And when your boundary is rooted in resonance, it becomes invisible but undeniable. Traditional boundaries operate from fear. Fear of being hurt again. Fear of being drained. Fear of being manipulated. Fear of losing yourself and others. But quantum boundaries operate from signal strength. You don't fear being thrown off. You know you're too tuned for the wrong frequency to stick. You don't need to defend your space. Your field does that automatically. Because here's the quantum secret. When your frequency is precise, anything incompatible will self-eject. It doesn't need a door slammed. It doesn't need a confrontation. It just can't sustain coherence inside your stream, and so it collapses. Now, how do you install a quantum boundary? Here's how it works. Clarify your current signature. What is your stabilized field emitting? Peace, power, stillness, expansion. Identify it. Track what disrupts that state. Who, what, or where causes slippage in that signal. Withdraw your response energy. Stop reacting to what's outside your field. Just because it appears doesn't mean you owe it engagement. Only exchange energy where resonance is mutual. Not polite. Not tolerable. Mutual. If it doesn't elevate both sides, it's interference. Let people feel the silence. Silence is not rudeness. It's boundary language without sound. Let them feel the absence of access. And most importantly, trust the field to filter for you. You don't need to micromanage. The field self-corrects when you hold your coherence. Quantum boundaries are how you preserve glide without effort. They allow you to stay open without being penetrated by distortion. They let you remain sensitive without being overwhelmed. They let you love freely without absorbing debris. Because the most powerful protection isn't disconnection. It's frequency accuracy. When your signal is clean, the stream protects itself. Next, we shift our relationship with time. You'll learn why waiting is a distorted concept, and how real patience is actually a quantum skill that preserves your wavelength and accelerates your trajectory. You've likely been told to be patient in life. Be patient with the process. Be patient with results. Be patient with people. Be patient with yourself. But in the quantum realm, patience isn't passive. It isn't spiritual waiting. It isn't noble restraint. Patience is wavelength preservation. And the moment you understand that, you stop suffering in the space between. Let's get precise. In a linear framework, time passes and things eventually happen. But in a quantum framework, the moment your field matches a timeline, it already exists. So why don't you see it yet? Because there's often a wavelength gap. A gap between your current embodied frequency and the stabilized frequency of the timeline you've tuned to. That gap isn't a delay. It's a sacred zone of signal preservation. And patience in this zone doesn't mean waiting around. It means holding the frequency without wobble until the timeline finishes rendering. Think of it like buffering. You've selected a new channel. Your antenna is pointed. Your frequency is correct. But if you turn the dial before it finishes loading, you lose the signal. That's what most people do. They align. Then they wobble. They question the delay. They doubt the glide. They slip back into old timelines. And they call it nothing working. When in reality, they just didn't preserve the wavelength long enough. So what does real patience look like? It looks like still feeling peace, even when there's no proof. Acting in integrity, even when results haven't arrived. Refusing to chase signs, because you trust the field. Remaining energetically clean, so the timeline finishes forming. Never treating not yet as not working. Because here's the truth. The moment you need the timeline to arrive faster, you wobble. The moment you watch for signs too closely, you distort the signal. The moment you attach to when, it begins slipping. That's not patience. That's signal decay. Patience in the quantum isn't about endurance. It's about refinement. It says, I've already selected the stream. I've already matched the field. My job now is to hold without collapse. That doesn't mean doing nothing. It means doing only what matches the timeline you've tuned to. No proving, no forcing, no urgency. Only stabilized action from within the glide. Let's flip the narrative entirely. Patience is not a delay. It's the proof you're operating at mastery. Because anyone can align for a moment. Anyone can feel clear for a day. Anyone can tune in when conditions are perfect. But the ones who hold the frequency cleanly, without checking the clock, are the ones who begin to bend time itself. Because time bends for coherence. When your signal is unwavering, the field collapses delay. Not through magic, through magnetism. You may feel it now. There's a timeline forming. You've tuned to it. You've tasted it. You've felt its emotional preview. But it hasn't fully arrived yet. Don't panic. Don't press. Don't pause your glide. Hold. Hold the feeling. Hold the behavior. Hold the non-resistance. And let the stream catch up to your precision. Next, we disrupt the illusion that time flows linearly and show you how to shift into a more rewarding timeline by accessing slices of time that are already happening, just one frequency away. You're not running out of time. You're not behind. You're not waiting for something to happen. You're simply tuned to a slice of time that doesn't hold the version of you you've been sensing. That's all. And once you see this, truly see it, you unlock the ability to shift into a more rewarding timeline without chasing, hustling, or waiting for permission. Because time, as you've known it, is a myth of the five senses. It appears linear, but it's layered. And each slice holds its own version of you, already active. So the question isn't, how do I create that future? The real question is, which slice am I currently tuned to, and what's preventing the shift? Let's break this down. Linear time says, past, present, future. It says you move through time. Quantum time says, all moments exist now, and you move through frequency. In this model, you're not traveling through time. You're collapsing potential slices based on your alignment. And each slice has a different emotional tone, a different set of opportunities, a different cast of characters, a different stream of synchronicity. You're not building a future. You're matching a slice. And the reason your life looks the way it does today, because your dominant frequency sustains the current slice. This is why some people seem to evolve rapidly. They're not moving faster. They're tuning cleaner. They let go of identities that were aligned to slower slices. They dropped mental narratives that anchored them in delay. They stabilized their field long enough to hop streams. And once you hop, you don't go back unless your frequency does. So how do you shift slices intentionally? Start with emotional awareness. Ask, what does this current timeline feel like in my body? What assumptions keep repeating in this version of reality? What story does this slice hold about what's possible for me? Now contrast that with the timeline you've sensed. What emotions dominate that version? What assumptions are normal in that version? What stories are extinct in that version? Feel the gap, not to panic, but to recalibrate. You don't shift slices through effort. You shift through emotional alignment, because emotions are access points to different timelines, not reactions to life, but selectors of slices. If you're stuck in a repetitive loop, it's not because the future isn't available. It's because your emotional body is loyal to a slice you've outgrown. Time only feels slow when you're in the wrong layer. It accelerates when the correct stream locks in. And the fastest way to accelerate? Release your emotional loyalty to the current slice. Let go of what's familiar. Drop what used to make sense. Interrupt a narrative that matches this slower field. Only then can a new slice fully load. You're not broken. You're not late. You're not blocked. You're just tuned to a timeline that doesn't match your current identity anymore. And when you recognize that, without judgment, you're free to change slices without waiting for life to change first. Now that you're ready to stop watching the future arrive and start tuning into the now, where it's already real, we'll explore exactly how to select a timeline where your outcome already exists and pull it into the present. Right now, somewhere in the infinite field, there's a version of you that already figured it out. The project launched, the relationship harmonized, the healing completed, the internal peace stabilized. That version of you isn't hypothetical. It's not potential. It's active, just not here. Yet, your job isn't to build it from scratch. Your job is to tune to the timeline where it already worked. Because timelines are not built by effort. They're matched by frequency. And when you finally stop trying to make it happen, and instead embody the version of you for whom it already has, everything shifts. Let's dismantle the outdated model. Most people are taught this. Set the goal, make the plan, work the steps, hope for progress, adjust, eventually succeed. But this model is slow, linear, and mostly misaligned with the quantum. Here's what actually works. Identify the timeline that holds your result. Decode the frequency it operates on. Begin living as if that result is normal. Watch the field adjust accordingly. Because results are attracted by coherence, not desire. If you keep desiring something without becoming the you who already lives it, you create separation, not connection. So how do you select a timeline where it already worked? You start with a feeling. Drop the mental pictures. Forget the exact how. Feel the resonance of already done. Ask, what emotional signature does that version of me carry? What is completely absent in their energy? What do they never second guess? What daily microactions feel automatic to them? Then compare it with now. And where the two don't match, that's the misalignment. Let's say you want to shift into the timeline where your business already thrives. Don't ask, how do I get there? Ask, what is the version of me already living there know, expect, and tolerate? Does that version obsess over metrics hourly? No. Wait for permission? No. Over-explain their offers? No. Need validation to trust their own direction? No. Then stop doing those things. Not because you're trying to fake it, but because that version doesn't do them. You're not pretending. You're tuning. This shift is subtle but powerful. Stop trying to create the future. Start listening to the field that's already holding it. That version of you is broadcasting back to you right now. The clarity, the strategy, the words, the actions, all of it exists, not in your imagination, but in the timeline you haven't felt safe enough to tune to yet. So safety becomes the key. When you feel safe receiving what you've asked for, you naturally begin acting like it's already yours, and the stream responds in kind. But here's where most people get stuck. They visit the right timeline emotionally, but then panic when their physical reality doesn't immediately match. So they fall back into force, back into doubt, back into the slower slice. And the faster timeline collapses, not because it wasn't real, but because it wasn't held. Timeline matching is not a momentary vibe. It's a stabilized field. And that means repetition, not forcing, but rebecoming. Every day, every breath, every action. You ask, is this congruent with the version of me who already lives it? If yes, proceed. If no, pause. Because every micro-decision is either collapsing the gap or sustaining the delay. You don't need to work harder. You don't need to manifest louder. You don't need to journal more. You only need to live like the result already arrived, and trust that the quantum will make it visible, because the moment you match the frequency where it already worked, it starts working here. Next, we strip away the traditional model of visualization and show you a cleaner, more powerful way to shift timelines, not by imagining them, but by observing reality through a different lens with no mental distortion. Visualization feels empowering. It's taught in nearly every success manual. Picture the future. Imagine the goal. Visualize the outcome. You've likely tried it. You've probably felt the surge of clarity, or even emotion, that comes with it. But still, your reality doesn't always shift. Why? Because traditional visualization contains distortion. It's often embedded with effort, resistance, and subtle disbelief. You see the image, but your body doesn't believe it. You feel the desire, but you're also reinforcing the lack of it. You mentally construct the scenario, but it still lives outside your present state. And that means you're not tuning, you're fantasizing. The quantum doesn't respond to fantasy. It responds to frequency. Let's go deeper. Most visualization operates on this subconscious message. I am not yet that version of me, so I need to imagine what it would feel like. That statement alone reveals the problem. It begins with separation. It tells the field, I'm watching something I don't yet have. I'm reaching for something that isn't here. I'm using imagination as a bridge because I don't believe I can simply observe it now. But observation is not imagination. Observation is alignment through neutral awareness. It doesn't dream. It detects. And the moment you observe from clean signal, without interference, you collapse the gap between thought and field. Here's the pivot. Stop visualizing the future you want. Start observing the evidence of its presence now. Ask, where is that frequency already present in my life, no matter how subtle? What do I already do, feel, sense that belongs to the version I've been imagining? What parts of reality already match that timeline? But I've ignored them because they weren't perfect. This shift is powerful because it collapses fantasy and brings everything into nowness. You're not chasing a vision. You're noticing a pattern. And whatever you notice consistently grows. Let's use an example. Say your visualization is financial abundance. Instead of picturing piles of money, ask, where is financial stability already showing up? What behaviors am I already embodying that reflect a new financial identity? What thought, choice, or awareness today reflected the abundant version of me? By observing those anchors without distortion, you amplify their presence in the field, and you create space for the next version to expand naturally. This is what most people miss. The quantum is not moved by how vividly you imagine. It's moved by how cleanly you observe. Because observation is power. In quantum mechanics, the observer effect literally changes the outcome. But the observer must be still enough to not collapse potential into limitation. So when you observe reality without needing it to be different, you stop distorting the signal. And when the signal is clean, reality conforms to it. Now, how do you practice clean observation? Here's the protocol. Drop the outcome. You're not using your observation to make something happen. You're simply receiving what already is. Feel your body. Bring awareness to how your system feels as you look at the evidence. Stay grounded in sensation, not fantasy. Detach from scale. Small signs matter. Subtle matches are still valid. Don't dismiss them because they're not dramatic. Anchor repetition. Revisit the same observation daily until it becomes normalized in your field. Let go of story. Don't explain it. Don't justify it. Just witness it, and let the witnessing amplify it. Because when observation is clean, the field does the rest. Next, we expose the root trap most people never see. The identity loops that keep you unconsciously tuned to an outdated version of self. These loops aren't psychological, they're frequency prisons. Most people are living inside a false certainty. The belief that their personality is who they are. That their preferences, habits, responses, and narratives are stable, core truths. But in reality, your personality is just a frequency, a cluster of patterns, a memory-anchored behavior loop, an identity shaped not by truth, but by repetition. And if you're not careful, that loop becomes a prison. Not because you can't escape, but because you never question the signal you're still tuned to. Here's what's real. Yourself is not static. It's broadcasted. And your current identity is just the frequency you've rehearsed the longest. You think, I'm bad at finishing things. I always procrastinate. I'm the kind of person who overthinks. I don't do well with money. I'm just intense. I need external validation. These aren't facts. They're broadcast loops you've agreed to, and each one holds a vibration that aligns you with a matching reality stream, which means your personality isn't just how you act. It's how you lock yourself into a timeline. Now, why do these loops persist? Because they feel familiar, and familiar equals safe. The brain loves safety. It mistakes repetition for truth. It assumes that what's been true must stay true. And so, even when your stream is ready to shift, your identity anchors you to a version of you you've already outgrown. Here's how you'll know you're stuck in an identity loop. You defend your habits more than your potential. You speak about yourself in permanent language. I always. I never. I'm just the type who. You feel resistance to doing what matches your future identity, even though you know it's aligned. You keep attracting the same results, even after doing inner work. It's not that your outer life hasn't changed. It's that your inner signal hasn't updated. To break the loop, you must question the tone of your identity, not just the content. What is the energetic texture of your current self-concept? Is it heavy? Is it brittle? Is it laced with defense mechanisms? Or is it open, fluid, light enough to shift? Because when your personality becomes too defined, you lose your ability to collapse into alternate streams. You become predictable, and the quantum reflects that back perfectly. So what's the move? Don't fix the identity. Release it. Let go of needing to be consistent. Stop trying to make sense. Drop the idea that your past behavior earns you any kind of psychic credit. Then ask, who would I be without this thought? What version of me arises if I stop narrating myself? What energy enters the room if I show up as no one I've been before? This isn't chaos. It's frequency freedom. And when you free yourself from identity, the stream has room to shift. You may feel it already. Your personality isn't wrong. It's just expired. And continuing to wear it is like tuning into a radio station that only plays old songs you're tired of hearing. It's time to change the channel. Not through effort, but through refusal to stay locked in old resonance. Because once you realize identity is a frequency, you can choose a new one without needing a breakdown first. And that unlocks the ultimate permission to become someone else, without apology, without explanation, without regression. Next, you'll learn the quantum power of becoming undefined, and how that unlocks access to an unlimited set of selves that can fluidly glide into the exact frequency your desired timeline requires. You've now seen it. Your identity is not you. It's just a familiar frequency, and familiarity has kept you inside the walls of a story that no longer fits. So what's next? You become undefined. This is not erasure. This is not emptiness. This is not being lost. Becoming undefined is your return to infinite selectability. It is how you become any version of self the moment demands, without contradiction, resistance, or narrative drag. Because when you are no longer trapped in a personality frequency, you become a field of options. And that's when the quantum finally moves for you with zero resistance. You were taught that consistency is integrity, that being authentic means always being the same, that changing who you are is betrayal. But none of that is truth in a quantum world. In reality, identity fluidity is power, adaptability is intelligence, multiplicity is freedom. When you're undefined, you don't protect your old reactions. You don't argue for your old limitations. You don't cling to your past truths just to be consistent. Instead, you shift, quickly, cleanly, without apology. Let's go deeper. Each reality stream has a required version of you, a specific frequency match, a precise configuration of internal traits, a set of thoughts, feelings, and behaviors that lock you into that stream. When you're undefined, you can step into that configuration instantly. without needing to evolve there, without needing to wait until you're ready, without needing to grow into it. You simply select it, not with thought, with field. And that's when things move at quantum velocity. So how do you become undefined? You start by releasing attachment to the following: your past victories. They are not your identity. They are echoes. Celebrate them, but don't shrink into them. Your known traits. I'm an introvert. I'm analytical. I'm intense. Every time you speak these as absolutes, you narrow your field. Your trauma responses. Yes, they shaped you, but they don't define you. Stop letting survival patterns masquerade as personality. Your validation sources. When you're undefined, you don't require others to confirm who you are. You stop outsourcing your self-permission. Your consistency. The need to be consistent is a program. It keeps people loyal to past timelines long after they've expired. Now, once you drop these, space opens. And in that space, new templates emerge. A new you enters. One who isn't building from the past. One who isn't tethered to what others recognize. One who can instantly activate the right frequency for any moment. This is shape-shifting, not theatrics. It's vibrational architecture. It's what mystics knew, what quantum scientists now glimpse, and what your body already understands. And it is how you glide, not as one version of self, but as a sliding field of pure response to signal. You are not a name. You are not a story. You are not a fixed frequency. You are a stream. And now that you've learned how to become undefined, it's time to experience what happens when effort is no longer required and the field itself begins doing the work for you. You've spent years trying, working, pushing, doing. You've been conditioned to believe that effort equals movement, that energy output equals results, that more hustle equals more impact. But here's what the quantum reveals. Effort is not always the catalyst. In fact, it's often the interference. Because once you become a field of coherence, effort becomes redundant. What matters then isn't how much you do. It's what you activate. Let's define this clearly. Action is linear. It's the external output of energy. Activation is quantum. It's the internal precision of signal. When you act from misalignment, your action distorts the field. When you activate alignment, your entire field begins working for you. This is what ancient initiates called effortless manifestation. What mystics touched when they spoke of inner knowing. What athletes refer to as flow state. What you've brushed against in moments where things just clicked. It wasn't luck. It wasn't coincidence. It was activation. So how do you know the difference? Ask, am I doing this to prove something or because it feels inevitable? Am I acting out of panic? Or am I responding from clarity? Am I taking steps that feel logical or ones that vibrate as complete already? Do I need this action to validate me? Or does it broadcast my internal yes? If your answer leans toward effort, pause, because effort is rooted in mistrust. You don't need to force what the field is ready to deliver. And once you shift from effort to activation, here's what changes. You stop asking, what should I do? You start sensing, what am I already tuned to receive? You stop building momentum manually. You start collapsing timelines simply by being coherent. Let's go further. Activation is not something you do. It's something you become. You walk into a room, and the field responds. You write a single sentence, and it resonates for months. You send an offer, and the right people find it before you promote. Not because you worked harder, but because your signal was active. And activation, unlike effort, has no burnout, no resentment, no depletion, because it isn't energy out. It's energy radiated. Here's how to live from activation. Stabilize before you act. Let coherence be your baseline. Never move from confusion. Act only when the field is full. When your signal is dense with alignment, the tiniest move causes waves. Speak only when transmission is clear. Stop filling space. Wait until the energy has shaped into resonance, then let it speak. Let silence do half the work. Stillness is not emptiness. It's the charging zone for your next timeline. The more still you are, the more accurate your actions. Sense readiness, not pressure. When it's time, you won't feel anxious. you'll feel gravitational pull. That's your activation cue. Here's what this means in practice. You don't act to attract. You activate attraction. You don't speak to convince. You speak from coherence. You don't create from demand. You create from overflow. And when you do, the field delivers in ways your linear mind couldn't plan, because you're no longer signaling chaos. You're broadcasting inevitability. So now ask yourself, where have I been efforting when I could have been activating? What have I been trying to make happen that might already be forming if I stopped pushing? What would change today if I moved only when the frequency was undeniable? You don't need to work harder. You need to tune cleaner. And the moment you do, you'll see that the timeline you've been chasing has been circling you, just waiting for a stable enough field to land inside. Next, we move into one of the most misunderstood forces in reality design: certainty, not as a feeling, but as an energetic field you can emit. Certainty has been misunderstood. It's not confidence. It's not arrogance. It's not the absence of fear. And it's definitely not pretending to know something you don't. Certainty is an energetic field. And when it's active, everything around you rearranges to match it. This field doesn't shout. It doesn't seek validation. It doesn't need reinforcement. It simply is. And the universe, which mirrors vibration, can't help but comply. Let's clarify the difference. Confidence is emotional. It can be shaken, performed, or constructed. Certainty is vibrational. It's stable, silent, and doesn't require evidence. Confidence looks around to see if it's working. Certainty acts from the truth that it already is. This is why certainty is one of the most magnetic forces in the quantum stream. Because when you emit it, there's no competing signal. You don't need to feel confident to be certain. You only need to drop distortion. Certainty doesn't come from believing in yourself. It comes from releasing mental noise, letting go of internal negotiations, stabilizing your signal regardless of external movement, trusting that alignment always becomes visible when uninterrupted, because the only thing blocking certainty is split frequency. When part of you wants something, and another part doubts it, you collapse your own field. But when there's no wobble, no negotiation, just signal, that's certainty. Here's what certainty feels like in the body. No urgency, no inner debate, no need to explain, no spike in energy before decisions. A clean, sustained presence. And here's the paradox. The more certain you are, the less you try. Because you don't hustle when arrival is inevitable. You don't prove when you're aligned. You don't chase when you already are. This is the field that causes timelines to rearrange around you. Now, how do you cultivate the field of certainty? You don't build it, you remove what blocks it. Step by step. Drop the need to feel ready. Ready is a delay program. Certainty doesn't wait. It activates and the field adjusts. Silence the outcome monitor. You don't check constantly for signs when you're certain. You hold the tone and assume delivery. Stop explaining yourself. Certainty doesn't narrate. Every time you justify your moves, you leak frequency. Act as if you've already arrived. This isn't fake it till you make it. It's acting from completion, not toward it. Let it feel boring. Certainty isn't loud. It's still. When alignment feels uneventful, it's working. The quantum doesn't need you to be confident. It needs you to be clean. And clean signal, held long enough, creates field certainty. People, opportunities, and timelines don't respond to what you want. They respond to the quiet, unwavering pulse of your actual frequency. So check yours. Does your tone scream, "I need this to happen"? Or does it whisper, "It already has"? That whisper carries more force than any affirmation. And now that you've begun to stabilize certainty, you'll notice the field begins to speak back, often through a strange, quiet language, repetition. Next, we decode how repeating messages, symbols, and moments are not accidents, but the universe's way of giving you live stream feedback. You've heard it before. Pay attention to the signs. But what if the real signs aren't dramatic at all? What if they don't show up in visions or lightning strikes? What if they come softly, repeatedly, until you finally tune in? Welcome to the quantum language of repetition. This is how the universe speaks to you when your field is aligning, or when it's veering off course. Same message from 3 different people. Same number sequence for days. Same emotion surfacing in different situations. Same dream multiple nights. Same piece of advice from random places. These aren't coincidences. They're echoes. And each one is a frequency ping, nudging you toward correction or confirmation. The quantum field is feedback responsive. It's not personal. It's not judgmental. It's not mysterious once you understand its cadence. It reflects you, not as punishment or reward, but as data. And when the same message keeps appearing, it means your field is broadcasting something consistently enough to attract resonance. Whether that resonance is aligned or distorted depends on the signal. So here's the truth. Repetition equals real-time field mirror. Let's say you keep hearing this message. Let go. First from a podcast, then from a stranger in conversation, then from a billboard, then in a dream. That's not fluff. That's your field reflecting back a necessary action to collapse resistance. Or let's say you hear this repeatedly. You're already enough. Not because you're broken, but because your field is asking you to stop seeking proof. These echoes are instructions. They're calibrations. And they only keep repeating because you haven't fully acted on them yet. Here's how to work with repetition. Instead of dismissing it, stop brushing it off. The more subtle the signal, the more tuned you need to be. Don't ignore whispers waiting for screams. Catalog the pattern. Write down the messages you keep hearing. Patterns become obvious once seen side by side. Ask what emotion each one activates. If repetition makes you uncomfortable, that's your work. If it brings peace, that's your direction. Respond, don't just notice. Confirmation is not the goal. Calibration is. If a message hits you 3 times, change something. Trust the first time. The universe will repeat until you listen. But mastery is listening without needing the echo. And it's not just external repetition. Internal loops count too. Recurring thoughts, recurring fears, recurring longings. These aren't random either. They're messages from your subconscious, trying to recalibrate your conscious choices. If you keep thinking, there has to be another way, you're being asked to release the current method. If you keep feeling, I'm wasting time, you're tuned to the wrong slice. The message always reflects the stream. Now here's where repetition becomes powerful. When it stops. Because once you act on a repeated message and shift accordingly, the field adjusts. The echoes fade. The pings stop. The noise clears. Why? Because repetition is only necessary until realignment happens. Once you're in stream, silence. That silence is an absence. It's confirmation. It's the sound of no more correction needed. So ask yourself now, what patterns have I been ignoring? What have I heard 3 times, but still haven't responded to? What thought won't leave me alone? And why haven't I acted on it? Because the answers aren't hidden. They're repeating. And once you treat repetition as sacred, not random, you'll start catching quantum cues in real time. Next, we'll drop the entire cultural narrative of hustle and hard work and anchor into the truth. You were never meant to burn out for alignment. You were meant to tune your field until reality bends around ease. The myth is persistent. That effort equals worth. That hustle proves readiness. That struggle attracts results. But the quantum doesn't operate on strain. It operates on signal clarity. So the deeper truth is this. You were never meant to grind. You were meant to tune, not push reality, but align with a version of it that already wants to support you. You're not lazy when you slow down. You're strategic when you align first. Hard work is not inherently wrong, but it's often compensatory. People grind hardest when their field is unclear. They hustle when their frequency is scattered. They overexert because their internal match is weak. Effort becomes a substitute for alignment. And while yes, it can move things, it usually moves them out of sync. So you end up doing more, while receiving less. Here's the switch. Work is not the signal. Clarity is. If your signal is distorted, no amount of action creates the right outcome. If your signal is clean, even one small gesture can ripple through timelines. And this isn't philosophy, it's physics. Coherence amplifies field strength. Chaos weakens it. Let's break it into two states. Forcing energy. Feels like urgency. Creates pressure on the body. Demands validation through action. Repeats old emotional loops. Distrusts ease. Tuned energy. Feels like inevitability. Brings calm before results. Requires little explanation. Matches outcomes emotionally before physically. Trusts the unseen. Which one have you been living from? And more importantly, how much longer are you willing to exhaust yourself for outcomes that don't stick? Tuning well means you stop acting until the field is clear. Say no to opportunities that aren't energetically precise. Know the difference between momentum and noise. Drop into inner calibration before touching outer strategy. Hold the tone even when nothing seems to be happening. Because tuning isn't passive, it's precision work. You're not avoiding the doing. You're refining it so deeply that each move lands with exactness. And one act from a tuned field equals 100 acts from fractured one. So if you've been told, you're lazy, you're not doing enough, you're falling behind, you need to be everywhere. Pause, because maybe you've just been early to a deeper wisdom, that reality organizes itself around those who stabilize their frequency, that external action is only as effective as internal congruence, and that success isn't a badge of labor, it's a reflection of energetic integrity. You are not here to chase. You are here to emit. You are not here to exhaust. You are here to resonate. The truth is, life is never testing your hustle. It's reading your coherence. And the moment you remember that, you stop proving. Next, we explore what that resonance shows you. In your life, your relationships, your money, and your patterns, by decoding the reality around you as your perfect holographic feedback loop. Your life is not random. It's responsive. And everything you're seeing, feeling, and interacting with right now is part of a holographic mirror, reflecting your dominant internal broadcast, not to punish you, not to shame you, but to show you where your field is tuned. Your reality is not judging you. It's matching you. And the faster you can accept that truth, the faster you can start using it, not to blame yourself, but to calibrate with surgical precision. So, what exactly is a holographic mirror? It's a feedback field, a seamless reflection of your beliefs, both conscious and buried, your emotional set point, your assumptions about how life works, your unseen agreements with limitation or expansion, your current dominant frequency. The hologram doesn't lie. It doesn't play favorites. It simply projects what's been encoded. Now here's the twist. Most people try to change the mirror. They argue with it. They bargain with it. They resent what it shows. But the mirror is just a mirror. You don't fix a bad reflection by polishing the glass. You shift what's being reflected. That means your job isn't to force people to treat you better. Your job isn't to chase different outcomes. Your job isn't to manipulate surface-level change. Your job is to tune your field until the outer reflection has no choice but to update. Let's break this down. Ask yourself, is my current environment validating my expansion or my doubt? Are the people around me reflecting my boundaries or my fear of conflict? Is my financial reality echoing trust or control? Are my opportunities reflecting boldness or self-protection? Everything you're experiencing right now is a perfect mirror of what your frequency has been allowing. And that's good news, because it means you don't have to change everything. You only have to change the signal. Here's what happens when your signal shifts. Conversations change without confrontation. Offers arrive without outreach. Resistance dissolves without pushing. Support appears without asking. Clarity drops in without effort. You didn't manifest it. You didn't earn it. You simply aligned to the version of reality where it was already trying to reach you. The mirror updated. Now, how do you use the hologram with intention? Step 1. Watch for feedback, not flaws. The moment something triggers you, reflect. What is this showing me about my field? Step 2. Shift tone, not tactic. Don't rush to fix the outer. Shift the energetic tone underneath it. Step 3. Interrupt identification. When you say this is just how life is, you freeze the mirror. Say instead, this is what my frequency has been reflecting. It can change. Step 4. Treat resistance as signal static. Wherever you feel force, friction, or fatigue, your mirror is blurred. Clear the distortion before taking action. Step 5. Reinforce reflection. Once the mirror updates, lock it in. Celebrate small reflections. Let them grow. They're stabilizing the new frequency. This is not theory. It's mechanics. Once you stop reacting to your reality and start reading it, you become your own quantum tuner. You won't need signs from the outside to validate your path. The mirror will confirm it instantly, but only when your field is coherent. So now look around. What's echoing? What's looping? What's mirroring something you thought you healed, but clearly didn't? The mirror is never wrong. It's never late. It's always precise. And the moment you shift internally, everything external prepares to follow. You don't force it. You don't beg it. You don't rush it. You reflect it. Next, we decode the truth about entanglement, not just as a physics concept, but as the invisible way people link into your quantum field and alter your frequency stream, for better or worse. Quantum entanglement isn't just some exotic theory from a science textbook. It's happening inside your life right now. Every connection you formed, every exchange of emotional charge, every deep resonance you've felt with another human being has created a tether. You're not just social, you're entangled, and that entanglement either strengthens your quantum stream or it corrupts it. This is the secret most alignment work misses. You can be tuning your field perfectly, but if your entanglements are distorted, your signal won't stabilize. Because people don't just influence you emotionally, they influence you energetically. Here's what you must understand. Every time you form a high-charge emotional or psychic bond with someone, whether through love, trauma, rivalry, admiration, resentment, or longing, there's a thread that forms. A thread of attention, a thread of emotional frequency, a thread of resonance. And that thread becomes a channel, bidirectional. You're not just affecting them. They're shaping your field in real time, whether you speak to them or not, whether you're physically near them or not, whether they're aware or unconscious. If the entanglement exists, so does the influence. There are 3 types of entanglement. Constructive entanglement. These are bonds that amplify your coherence. You feel more aligned, more powerful, more yourself around them. Their field reinforces your tuning. Distorted entanglement. These are relationships where you constantly lose signal. You collapse into roles, fears, or patterns that belong to outdated versions of yourself. Static entanglement. These are bonds that no longer evolve. They hold you in a frequency plateau. Safe, familiar, but stagnant. Most people don't audit these threads. They think staying connected is noble. But in reality, staying entangled without discernment equals self-sabotage. You wouldn't stay subscribed to a frequency that gives you static 24/7. So why stay bound to someone who muddies your field? Now, how do you detect a corrupt entanglement? Ask, do I feel more expanded or more constricted after being around them? Even virtually? Do I feel I must suppress parts of myself to preserve this connection? Do my thoughts default to them, even when they're not present? Is their voice louder in my field than my own? Does their unresolved chaos enter my calm? If the answer is yes, you're not in a relationship. You're in an entangled frequency loop. And that loop must be cleaned, or your stream won't flow cleanly, no matter how well you try. There's no judgment here. This isn't about cutting people off from ego. This is about honoring your energetic architecture. Because the more refined your frequency becomes, the more sensitive your field gets. And that means you'll start detecting entanglements that once felt normal, but now feel heavy. What was once connection may now feel like static. What once felt loyal now feels binding. What once felt warm now feels dampening. It's not because you're cold. It's because you're clearer. So what's the move? You don't always need confrontation. You don't always need a dramatic exit. You only need to detether the thread. That means pulling your attention inward, reclaiming the energy loops that were spiraling outward, letting their signal pass through instead of getting trapped in your field. releasing the identity you adopted in their presence, retuning to your original frequency, clean, whole, direct. When you do this, you unhook from distortion, and suddenly, your glide returns. You feel it almost instantly. The click, the exhale, the clarity. And here's the kicker. Sometimes, the person changes after you detangle. Why? Because the version of them that was distorted was feeding off your distortion. Once your field updates, they either meet you there or fall away. No forcing, no fighting, no explaining, just tuning. Next, you'll learn the paradox that unlocks high-frequency receptivity, how wanting nothing allows you to receive everything, and how detachment becomes your ultimate power tool for alignment. Let's break the final pattern. You've learned to stop forcing. You've learned to clean your signal. You've quieted the observer. You've felt the flow. But there's still one frequency that slips through the cracks. A subtle, magnetic resistance that's almost invisible. Wanting. Wanting is tricky. It feels honest. It feels human. It feels like the fuel for action. But in the quantum field, wanting is signal distortion. Why? Because the moment you want, you declare lack. You announce absence. You emit the message, "This is not yet mine." And the field listens. It doesn't hear your words. It feels your frequency. And it says, "Ah, they want it. That means they don't have it yet. Let's maintain that reality." And so, you wait. You work. You pray. You try to manifest. But the frequency of wanting stays active. And so the stream stays blocked. The quantum trick. Detach. Not from caring. Not from intention. But from need. From grasp. From energetic leaning. Detachment isn't numbness. It's certainty in stillness. It's saying, "I no longer chase this. I no longer crave it. I no longer frame it as outside me. I am that frequency now." Want dissolves. Receptivity opens. And the field collapses around you. Here's where it gets powerful. Detachment creates vacuum. A clean, charged, receptive space. The moment you let go of the needing signal, reality has room to rush in. What you chased, it turns toward you. What you obsessed over, it softens and surfaces. What you visualized endlessly, it arrives without the drama. Not because you tried harder, but because you stopped creating resistance with your own signal. Now, how do you practice quantum detachment? Step 1. Acknowledge desire without worshiping it. Yes, you want clarity, love, abundance, but don't let it define your signal. Let it pass through, like a breeze, not a storm. Step 2. Feel it now, not later. Instead of longing for the result, activate the feeling in the now. If you want freedom, become freedom in your breath, in your posture, in your presence. Step 3. Make decisions as if it's already yours. Don't wait for permission from the outer world. Choose from alignment. Move from ownership. Let action reflect arrival, not anticipation. Step 4. Observe your reactions. When the outcome delays, what emotion surfaces? That's the want clinging again. Release it. Over and over, until your field calms. Step 5. Let nothing be a condition. If you need a thing to feel peace, you've disqualified yourself from quantum receipt. Rebuild inner sufficiency now. You're not meant to kill desire. You're meant to unhook from its grip. Let want visit, but don't build your field around it. Let desire pass through, but don't allow it to own your signal. And once you do, stillness becomes magnetic. Presence becomes radiant. Your stream becomes active, without pressure. Here's the paradox. The more you want something, the less likely it is to land. The more you can want it without needing it, the faster it arrives. Quantum detachment is not about giving up. It's about tuning beyond grasp. It's the energetic posture of one who is already whole. And wholeness, that's the strongest magnet in existence. Next, we move into one of the most reality-bending truths yet. How the less you try, the more the field opens. You'll now master the final reversal of effort itself, the reverse effort principle. You've tried to push. You've tried to plan. You've visualized. You've hustled. You've journaled, affirmed, and micromanaged every inch of your manifestation process. And yet, sometimes, despite all that, nothing moves. Or worse, it moves backward. Here's the quantum truth few are prepared for. The more you try, the less you align. The more you push, the more you repel. The more you chase, the more you confirm separation. Welcome to the reverse effort principle. This is not a theory. This is not spiritual fluff. This is a fundamental law of vibrational alignment. Reality does not respond to intensity. It responds to accuracy. Let's break it down. Effort in its common form is a declaration of mistrust. It says, "This won't happen unless I make it happen. I must control the variables, or it will all fall apart. If I stop pushing, nothing moves." That belief is subtle, but it's loud in the quantum. It tells the field, my power is conditional. My results are separate from me. My flow is fragile. So even if your mind believes you're manifesting from intention, your frequency is radiating tension, and the field always mirrors tone, not words. Now here's the paradox. When you finally stop trying to make something happen, it shows up. Why? Because the effort was clogging the channel. When effort drops, the signal clears. When signal clears, the field reorders. When the field reorders, life flows without force. This isn't laziness. This isn't inaction. This is precision stillness that collapses probability into presence. Think of effort like friction. Every time you add unnecessary movement, you add static. Every time you panic, overact, or control, you blur your targeting signal. But when you pause, when you soften, when you allow, you become magnetically obvious to the stream that's trying to reach you. You don't need to force alignment. You only need to stop scrambling your resonance. Here's how to spot misaligned effort in your day. You're working without clarity. You feel urgency with no precision. You do things because you're supposed to. You can't sit still without guilt. You feel like stopping equals failure. Each of these is a flag. Each is proof the reverse effort principle has been bypassed. But the moment you stop associating movement with worth, power returns. So what does reverse effort look like? It's the email you write after coherence, not out of pressure. It's the offer you make because you feel called, not because you're scared. It's the conversation you allow to land, not force into being. It's the signal you hold without checking your phone every hour to see if it worked. This is the new rhythm of alignment. Less proving, more precision, less friction, more field, less doing, more being tuned. And the only way to access this rhythm is to stop thinking you are the source of the result. You're not. You're the tuner. The field is the engine. The quantum is the delivery mechanism. So stop clogging the signal. Stop checking the outcome. Stop justifying your right to receive. You already are the stream. And now that the need to try has dissolved, you're ready to take the final step, letting go of the observer completely and becoming the field itself. For most of your journey, you've been told to become aware, to watch your thoughts, to monitor your emotions, to observe your patterns. And that was necessary, because observation pulled you out of unconscious automation. It gave you space. It gave you choice. But now something deeper calls. A frequency beyond observation. A signal beyond watching. It's time to stop being the observer and become the field. This is not about seeing reality. It's about being the code that shapes it. Let's clarify. The observer is the part of you that watches. The field is the part of you that is. The observer comments. The field broadcasts. The observer analyzes. The field saturates. Observation is separation. Field is unification. And when you become the field, reality no longer needs your commentary. It bends because your signal is that loud without a word. So why move beyond the observer? Because observation, if not upgraded, becomes a trap. You can get stuck in constant meta-awareness, always scanning your mind, always checking your frequency, always trying to be more conscious. And eventually, that creates static. You get caught in loops of overanalysis. You monitor instead of emit. You narrate instead of live. That's when it's time to drop the observer, not as a betrayal, but as a graduation. You don't need to observe your alignment once you've become alignment. So what does it feel like to become the field? There's no inner dialogue, just knowing. There's no should I or shouldn't I. There's movement. There's no emotional monitoring. There's embodied frequency. You don't interpret signs. You become the signal others calibrate to. You don't force presence. You are presence. This state doesn't require control. It requires trust. Trust that the frequency you've stabilized is enough, that your beingness transmits louder than your words. Here's how to move from observer to field. Release the need to explain. Stop commenting on your alignment. Stop narrating your awareness. Let the frequency speak for itself. Drop the internal scorecard. You don't need to track how good your signal is. The field doesn't self-assess. It simply broadcasts. Move without review. No post-analysis. No second-guessing. Once the field moves, the move is clean. Respond from saturation. When the signal is full, action isn't chosen. It happens. Let the field do the talking. Stop seeking feedback. You don't need approval to calibrate. The moment you feel the click inside, reality has already begun shifting. This is not cold. This is not aloof. This is precision presence. When you are the field, people calm around you. Timelines open around you. Resistance dissolves in your presence. Not because you explained, not because you convinced, but because you held tone, and the tone was enough. So now ask, am I still checking myself constantly? Am I observing because I don't trust the stream to hold me? Am I still acting like I need a guide inside me, instead of being the guide? Because this is the phase where the inner voice quiets, where the questions fade, where the mind no longer narrates the moment. Why? Because you've stopped being the observer, and you've finally merged with the stream. Next, we complete the collapse into unity by witnessing how infinite timelines fold down into the one you've tuned to. You'll now experience infinite streams, one vibration yours. Right now, countless versions of you exist, not metaphorically, not spiritually, but vibrationally. Each one occupies a slightly different frequency band, and each one is living a different outcome. There's a version of you already at peace, a version already wealthy, a version in full alignment, freedom, and expansion. These aren't fantasies. These are streams. Quantum physics calls it superposition. Your field calls it choice. And your vibration? That's the selector. Let's clarify something important. You are not navigating a linear life. You are surfing infinite trajectories, each one responding to your energetic tone. Reality isn't fixed. It's a stream of mirrors. And the moment your vibration shifts, so does the mirror. This is why change can feel both instant and impossible. If your frequency stays the same, time loops. If it shifts decisively, the loop collapses, and the new stream begins. But here's the deeper truth. You don't have to jump timelines. You only need to tune to the one that's already yours. Think of all potential lives like a deck of cards laid face down. Each one contains a possible outcome. Each card is activated by a signal, and the signal is always sent from now. Not from effort, not from hope, not from strategy, from vibration. The cleaner your signal, the more precise your draw. And once the right stream is activated, it starts folding reality around you. So what does it mean to own one vibration? It means you've stopped wavering. You've stopped tuning in and out. You've stopped reacting to external noise. You've become tonally consistent. That consistency doesn't mean emotionless. It means your field holds steady through fluctuations in form. And when the field is steady, the stream stabilizes. People start treating you differently. Opportunities arrive without outreach. Synchronicities multiply. Stuck loops dissolve. Not because you did more, but because the quantum no longer detects wobble. Let's explore how to identify your stream. Step 1. Feel the outcome before the evidence. Which future feels familiar, emotionally? That's the one you're closest to. Step 2. Watch for accelerated synchronicities. When the stream is selected, signals increase. Same messages, same symbols, same doors opening. Step 3. Notice friction drop. The wrong streams feel tight. The right one feels unnaturally smooth. Step 4. Test the field. Make micro moves in alignment with the chosen stream. If the response is immediate clarity, you're in. Step 5. Ignore former logic. Chosen streams don't always make sense to the mind. They make sense to the field. You're not trying to shift timelines anymore. You're not trying to fix outcomes. You're simply holding one vibration with such consistency that reality is forced to adapt. You no longer chase the stream. You are the stream. And now that stream begins to move, not toward goals, but beyond them. Next, you'll experience the state of quantum drifting, when guidance replaces goal setting and awareness replaces strategy. There's a quiet moment that arrives when the stream has stabilized, when you're no longer grasping, no longer aiming, no longer chasing an ideal future. It's not apathy. It's not complacency. It's something more refined. Quantum drifting, a state of fully conscious, fully guided movement within stream, without needing direction, milestones, or ambition. It's where doing becomes an after-effect of being, where motion follows frequency, where results collapse around presence. Let's dismantle a myth right now. Goals are not bad. They serve a purpose, until they don't. They give structure when the mind needs orientation. They offer contrast. They initiate movement. But eventually, goals become interference. Because when you're still creating from the concept of lack, your goals reflect that same lack. When you try to manifest abundance, you're often broadcasting scarcity. When you aim for clarity, you're often amplifying confusion. The very desire to reach a goal confirms that it's not yet part of you. And in the quantum, that creates separation. So what replaces goals? Signal. Pure, nonverbal alignment. A felt tone that says, this is the version of reality I'm available for. Everything else is noise. And that signal becomes a field. And that field becomes your only compass. You don't ask, what do I want? You feel, what is already humming inside me, waiting to be met? This is where quantum drifting begins. Drifting isn't passivity. It's precision relaxation. You're not doing nothing. You're doing only what aligns. You move not because you need to prove something. You move because the field nudges, and you've learned to trust the nudge. And because the stream has already been selected, the only question is, how lightly can I float while being carried to it? Here's how to access the state of quantum drifting. Drop future tracking. Let go of constantly checking how far you've come or how close you are. The stream doesn't report progress. It confirms alignment. Calibrate emotion, not outcome. Drifting follows emotional resonance. If the field feels tight, rest. If it hums, follow. Let reality surprise you. If you've planned the entire journey, there's no space for quantum intervention. Let the unexpected land. Trust pace over pressure. There's no behind in drifting. There's only misalignment, and it corrects itself as you relax. Stop asking, what's next? Instead, ask, what's here? And watch the stream unfold inside that question. Quantum drifting is not lazy. It's not lack of ambition. It's the surrender of conditional existence, where you no longer need to achieve something to validate your being, where joy no longer waits for milestones, where identity no longer hinges on proof. This is how you enter the unpressured self, the relaxed genius, the calm receiver. And the more you drift, the more power accumulates. Not because you're hoarding it, but because you're not leaking it. No more urgency. No more mental rehearsal. No more narrative-heavy striving. Just field. Just trust. Just this moment clean. And strangely, this is when everything speeds up. Because the field doesn't move faster when you push. It moves faster when there's no resistance. So now ask, where have I been forcing goals instead of drifting into timelines? What desires are ready to be released from pressure? What would it feel like to stop managing outcomes and start witnessing reality build itself around me? Because you're not here to climb ladders. You're here to float through portals. You're not here to strive. You're here to stabilize your signal and be carried. And when that's your mode of movement, all effort becomes grace. Next, you'll recognize the unmistakable signs that you've entered the right stream and how to read the subtle quantum confirmations that say you're home. You've quieted the observer. You've tuned your trajectory. You've detached from force. You've stopped needing, chasing, grasping. And now, without fanfare, without grand revelations, something begins to shift. It's subtle at first, but once you know what to look for, you'll never mistake it. These are the confirmation codes of quantum alignment, not signs from outside, not random signs from angels or the universe. These are vibrational reflections, reality's way of whispering, "You're in the right stream now." Let's clarify something first. When you're tuned, reality doesn't always change loudly. It doesn't announce itself with fireworks. It reorganizes itself around you gently, until the entire structure of your experience begins to hum and sync. So if you're waiting for dramatic proof, pause. Instead, watch for these subtle but undeniable shifts. They are your check-ins, your internal compass, your mirror, finally reflecting back the frequency you've been transmitting. Sign number 1, emotional flatlining without apathy. Suddenly, things that used to trigger you don't. You're not suppressing. You're not numbing. There's just nothing to push against. The emotional spikes fade. The loops unhook. You respond with neutrality, not indifference, but inner completion. The field no longer requires drama to get your attention. Sign number 2, collapsing of time sensation. Time starts behaving strangely. You'll forget entire days. You'll complete tasks in what feels like minutes. You'll meet someone and feel like you've known them forever. This isn't spiritual imagination. It's what happens when your internal stream outpaces the old timeline. You're no longer syncing to clock time. You're syncing to quantum time. Sign number 3, nonlinear progress. You skip steps. You bypass obstacles. Things arrive out of nowhere that should have taken months. No logical sequence. No traditional path. You're in a collapsed stream, and so reality begins bending to your tone instead of your plan. Sign number 4, feedback convergence. You'll start getting mirrored signals from multiple, unrelated sources. Someone uses a phrase you just thought about. You see a concept repeat across 3 unrelated conversations. A stranger gives voice to something you just felt internally. This is reality syncing its messages through entangled nodes. When it happens, don't question it. Smile. You're being mirrored. Sign number 5, decreased mental noise. You're not obsessing. You're not rehearsing conversations in your head. You're not mentally narrating your day. The stillness isn't empty, it's stable. You're no longer asking, "What should I do?" You're simply sensing when to move. And when you do, it clicks. Sign number 6, the arrival of ease that feels unnatural. Suddenly, things feel too easy. So easy, in fact, that you almost don't trust them. But that's just old programming gasping for air. You were taught struggle was noble. Now you're discovering that ease is precision. Welcome it. Normalize it. Let it be the new standard. Sign number 7, people react to you differently. Some start orbiting your calm. Others distance themselves without explanation. Some look confused, like they don't quite recognize you. They're not responding to your personality. They're responding to your field stability. You've stopped broadcasting interference. You're radiating coherence, and they feel it. Sign number 8, resistance feels foreign. You can no longer force things, even if you try. The friction makes you feel physically sick. The old patterns now feel toxic. The misaligned path is not just unappealing, it's energetically sealed off. And this is confirmation. The stream won't let you go back. It's too well selected. You're already carried. These signs are not rewards. They're not validations from some external force. They are echoes. Proof that your field has overtaken your fear. That your stream is stabilized. That the reality around you is catching up. You don't need to force anymore. You don't need to question it. You're already gliding. And now, to complete this entire journey, it's time to dismantle the last illusion. That this was magic. That this was luck. That this was supernatural. It was never any of those things. What you've experienced was mastery, and next, you'll own it. People will ask you, how did you do it? How did you shift so fast? How did your life change so quietly, so completely? And the old you might have answered with spiritual metaphors or cosmic cliches. But the new you knows the truth. This was never magic. This was mastery. Not of others, not of luck, not of outcomes, but of self. Let's be clear. What feels like magic to most people is simply invisible mechanics, once misunderstood, now accessed. There's no fantasy here, no wishful thinking, no mystical bypass, just the quantum structure of reality responding to alignment. That's not magic. That's blueprint. You've mastered your tone. You've clarified your signal. You've stopped reacting. You've started emitting. And now, reality bends accordingly. Because it has to. That's what it's built to do. The field was never arbitrary. It was always responsive. You were just taught to control it instead of cohere with it. So what is mastery truly? It's not perfection. It's not constant elevation. It's recognition and recorrection with speed. It means you catch yourself quicker. You return to tone faster. You drop distortions before they spiral. You trust your field before your mind. You feel the future in your skin, not your plans. Mastery is not what you do. It's how efficiently you recover your stream, and that efficiency becomes a stabilizer. So when someone says, "That's so lucky, you're manifesting magic, you must be gifted," you won't argue, but you'll know. This isn't random. This isn't external. This is what happens when signal equals identity. Your vibration stopped visiting alignment. It became alignment. And from that tone, reality had no choice but to organize itself. But let's be honest. This took precision. It took commitment. It took stripping away years of false effort and spiritual bypass. You confronted the forcing. You dropped the grasping. You quieted the observer. You chose the glide. That's not luck. That's discipline of the highest, quietest kind. And now, that discipline is your default. Mastery doesn't mean nothing ever goes wrong. It means when things wobble, you don't. It means when timelines shift, you adjust. When people react, you hold. When outcomes delay, you stabilize. Mastery is field authority. You are no longer someone inside a stream trying to survive. You are now the conductor of streams. So own it. This transformation wasn't given to you. It wasn't granted. It wasn't downloaded. It was tuned, earned through coherence, built through frequency repetition. And now that it's stabilized, you don't use the stream anymore. You are the stream. And with that identity in place, the only thing left is to live inside the glide forever. Which brings us to your final state, the last chapter, where there is nothing left to fix, chase, or reach. Only the ongoing experience of quantum presence. No more forcing. No more grasping. No more collapsing timelines out of fear. You've arrived, not in some external paradise, but in a state of frequency precision where life no longer needs fixing, because you're no longer creating distortion. This is not the end of a journey. It's the disappearance of the journey altogether. You're not on a path anymore. You are the stream. This is the glide state, not as a moment, but as a lifestyle, not a burst of flow, but a permanent undercurrent that carries you, quietly, powerfully, inevitably. Let's remember what glide really is. It's zero interference between your being and the field. No resistance. No mental commentary. No egoic oversteering. Just reality, folding effortlessly around the tone you hold. Not because you want it to. Not because you're convinced it to. But because you've become indistinguishable from the signal itself. That's why it flows. Because you stop being the obstacle. So what does living in the glide look like? You wake up without mental noise. You move when you're prompted, not when you panic. You receive without needing to prove you're worthy. You feel love without looking for someone to give it to you. You speak without rehearsing. You walk into rooms and the tone shifts, without effort, without intention. You no longer strategize. You no longer chase momentum. You no longer operate from what needs fixing. The field is active around you. You glide inside it, not as an exception, but as your baseline. Here's the truth you're now ready to hold. Glide is not a technique. It's not a practice. It's not a state you get into. Glide is what remains when distortion drops away. It's the natural architecture of your field when it's not being scrambled by fear, force, or identity loops. In other words, you don't earn it. You remember it. You've simply stopped overriding what was always trying to carry you. That means there's nothing to protect, nothing to defend, nothing to work hard to maintain. The only thing to do now is let it unfold. Let life reveal itself as you. Let timelines stabilize around you. Let people recalibrate in your presence. Let purpose emerge without prompting. And most importantly, let stillness stay active without needing to justify it. You no longer need external proof to feel aligned. The feeling is the proof. You might be wondering, but what if I slip? What if I fall back into effort? What if the stream fades? You won't. Why? Because you now know how to recognize distortion within seconds. You feel it in your skin, in your breath, in your tone, and you correct not by panicking, but by pausing. The stream doesn't punish missteps. It simply waits for coherence to return. You've become so attuned, so sensitive, so practiced in quiet recalibration, that even when you wobble, you return faster than ever. That's the beauty of field maturity. You no longer need drama to correct trajectory. A single breath, a single softening, a single moment of inner click, and the glide resumes. Now let's talk about the results. What happens when you glide for real? Here's what unfolds naturally, without forcing. People begin appearing who match your frequency. Not to teach, but to co-create. Opportunities land that you didn't pitch for, but feel unmistakably aligned. Abundance starts showing up in ways that bypass traditional logic. Time bends, compresses, expands, flows around you with fluidity. Decisions become clean, not because you calculated them, but because you know. But the most important result? You stop chasing outcomes. You no longer need to track them. You no longer need them to validate your alignment, because alignment itself becomes your currency. And from that currency, every outcome builds itself, quietly, effortlessly, and in exact resonance. And what about action? Do you still do things? Absolutely. But there's a profound difference now. Your action no longer comes from thought. It comes from field impulse. Not what should I do, but what does the signal want to express through me right now? And when that's your engine, action is light, effortless, potent. One small move from alignment replaces years of grinding. One sentence lands deeper than 1,000 strategies. One pause opens doors you didn't even know existed. That's the power of being actioned by the stream, not acting on the stream. So how do you continue gliding forever? Here's the only protocol you'll ever need. Hold your tone. Not your mindset. Not your schedule. Your tone. That's the broadcast. Keep it clean. Watch for force. Any sensation of trying too hard is a flag. Soften immediately. Realign. Return. Stay in a now signal. Don't lean forward into desire. Don't lean backward into regret. Hold the tone of now with precision. Trust the field's intelligence. You don't need to figure out how it'll work. It already knows. Your job is coherence. Let expansion replace goals. You don't need to measure progress. Just feel the field expanding. That's your compass. Now breathe. Feel the state, not as something to maintain, but as something that's always been here. The glide was never a gift. It was your default nature. You've simply remembered how to hold it. And no matter what happens in the world, no matter what unfolds around you, that tone doesn't need to change. The stream doesn't shut off when life gets intense. It just waits for your return. And now that you know how to return, glide becomes permanent, not as a goal, as a baseline reality. So this is it. The noise is gone. The distortion is dropped. The observer is quiet. The stream is chosen. The vibration is stabilized. The drift has begun. And what remains is you, not the old version, not the seeker, not the one trying to force life into shape, the field bearer, the signal, the one whose life now flows not by effort, but by presence. You no longer chase. You glide, forever,